We are waiting for a truly incredible and exciting story about the struggle between good and evil, between humans and monsters from other dimensions. These monsters cannot die even after death. They have escaped the terrible dungeon called Hell, and now they can do whatever they want. It is not at all difficult for these beings to dominate one dimension, so now they are aiming to conquer planet Earth. They were sure that this plan would be implemented very quickly, which is why they could not believe that anyone would stand in their way. It seemed like an ordinary person, but this person was not going to die and did not want to admit defeat. If it weren't for him, planet Earth would have been conquered very quickly, but it seems this guy has been given the opportunity to become immortal. At the same time, he became a very strong and powerful warrior who was able to stand up to these devilish creatures single-handedly. Now let's go back a little and talk about what happened 2 years before these events. Our main character's name is Khan, and today he's having a bad day because he had another fight with his younger sister. She allowed him to live in this house after Kang promised to find a job, but every day he only drinks alcohol and plays games. He's not ready to return to his parents, but his younger sister isn't going to drag him on her back. Tomorrow is New Year's. He needs to find a job and start taking life more seriously. Otherwise, it will drive him out onto the streets. This is not the first time they have had such a conversation. Lately, nothing has changed in his life. It's as if he's stuck in a time loop. The only thing he was able to achieve after moving to Seoul was an internship at a large corporation, but it is almost impossible to get a job there. Lately, Kang has been constantly thinking that it would be much better if life turned into a video game, then everything would fall into place. He could become a great warrior, or a wizard, master the art of the sword, and become the main hero of humanity. Kang does not even suspect that right at this very moment the world is changing, and that he will soon have similar opportunities. Just as a common connection with the Haken dimension was discovered, the Earth's defense system activated and stopped this connection. But Khan was sleeping peacefully and didn't even suspect it. The system began to launch internal training. If the land is in danger, then people should prepare to defend their territory. Suddenly, Kang opened his eyes and saw that he was in an unknown dimension. He did not understand what was happening and thought it was just a dream. The system reported that there were almost 5 years left until full connection with the Haken dimension, and in the meantime, the training period would begin. A total of 8 stages will await him. Death in this place is not connected with reality. He will not be able to give up. And if he fails, he will not be able to try again. Kang thought that such a dream could only be dreamed by a real gamer who needed serious treatment. His sister Helen was right. He should have played less video games. Then the guy decided to enjoy his sleep and take this opportunity to have fun. The system reported that the entry into the first stage is beginning. The system believes that Kang's courage can help save the world. He must demonstrate his courage and overcome what he fears most, and to do this, he must reach his destination at the end of the bridge. Reality has changed, and he finds himself in a completely different place. It's like a very bad dream. It turned out that you don't have to walk quite over a classic bridge. It's more like a narrow road over burning lava. He felt incredibly hot around him, but very quickly saw that other people had been given the same task. A few minutes ago he was at home and not worried, but now he found himself in an unknown dimension that he really doesn't like. Very quickly, Khan saw that his sister Helen was next to him. She was scared to death and didn't know what to do. Oddly enough, he is still sure that it is just a dream. He does not understand why she is in his dream, and thinks that it is too absurd. Helen also doesn't quite understand what's happening. It will be some time before they both realize that this is the real reality. Kang is sure that the brain is very easy to fool. People always say that they don't feel pain in their sleep, but he is sure that this is not true at all. He said that he had times when he went to the toilet in his sleep, and then woke up with a feeling of pleasure. Helen had never heard such a delusion in her life. In any case, he decided to go ahead and enjoy this imaginary reality. He is sure that he will not be able to die in real life. The system has already notified all participants of the first stage that they must reach the other side of the bridge, so they must move forward. Kang is sure that if he dies in this reality, he will immediately wake up and see that everything is fine. But his confidence quickly disappeared after he saw with his own eyes that one of the participants in the first stage fell into a lava flow and died a terrible death. Seeing this, his mood, like his sister's, immediately changed. The guy who fell into the lava screamed too realistically, so now Kang isn't sure it's all just song. The girl immediately suggested moving slowly and not making sudden movements. The main thing is to get to your destination safely. They both went forward and simultaneously talked about what was happening and whether it could be reality. Kang did not abandon his theory about the dream. He believes that it is just a realistic nightmare that will soon end. Helen has a different opinion. Such realistic dreams do not exist, so the world has really changed, and this is reality. Perhaps if they die at this stage, then in the real world, their lives also end. Soon the older brother began to believe her words and froze in place. Now, due to the fear of death, he cannot even move, and begins to pray, although he never believed in God before. Soon the system announced that the difficulty of the first stage would now be increased so that players would not relax. The bridge you need to cross to your destination has begun to collapse, so now is not the time to stand still. Helen realized this first, stood up, and immediately ran forward at full speed. Soon, Kang realized that if he continued to stand still, he would turn into a fried chicken. They ran forward together, and it seemed that soon this terrible ordeal would be conquered. Only a few steps remained to be taken. At that moment, Kang looked at his sister and saw that she was in danger, as the stones above her head were starting to fall down. If nothing is done, Helen will not be able to dodge this attack, so Khan must act immediately. He risked his own life, jumped onto her bridge, and at the last moment saved his younger sister from a terrible death. It was an incredible risk, but it was enough for them both to survive and reach their destination. The system immediately notified players that they had passed the first stage. Now they were temporarily awakened and ready to receive the reward for passing the test. A full awakening will occur after graduation, but for this you will have to go through many dangerous trials. Now players can view their characteristics in the system. Each of them has their own level, special abilities, and skills. Khan believes that a status window is the most important thing a man should receive for his birthday. He began to look and search for his characteristics, and saw that he had a special ability to resurrect. He tried to understand what this meant, but at that moment the reality around him changed, and he found himself back in his room. At first the boy thought it was a dream, even though everything seemed too realistic. Then he went on social media, and saw that a huge number of people were discussing this dream, so everyone had dreamed something similar. People discussed enlightenment, and shared tips on passing the stages of preparation. They did not even suspect that in 5 years the Earth would completely connect with the Hakan dimension. Seeing this, Kang immediately went out into the corridor and began to tell his sister everything that had happened. It turned out that she had seen the same thing. They screamed at each other until they realized that this really wasn't a dream at all, but some kind of parallel reality in which they found themselves at the same time. The brother and sister decided to have breakfast first, and then calmly discuss everything that had happened. After analyzing the news on the internet, they realized that this was not a dream, and it happened not only in their country. The whole world found itself in a parallel reality tonight. Khan believes that death in a dream does not affect reality. Some people have fallen into lava but not suffered serious injuries in real life. Although this news gives positive hope, it still all seemed too realistic. So now Helen is very scared. It seems that at this moment there is real chaos on the street. The world has changed, and now people have to adapt to the new reality. Hearing the noise in the yard, Kang went to the window to see what was happening there. He saw that people had split into different groups and had completely lost their minds, as if the apocalypse had begun. Someone was greedily buying food in the supermarket. Some people were saying that the time of divine judgment had come, and humanity must confess its sins. Of course, such a situation cannot occur without signs of vandalism, and there were many people who wanted to rob the nearest electronics and jewelry stores. This was not very pleasant to watch. It seemed as if the world had completely lost its mind in just one night. It is unlikely that Kang can now go out in search of a new job, because if he goes out, he will only risk his life once again. Helen remembers that the system reported on humanity's preparation for full connection with the Hakan dimension, but she doesn't understand what it all means. Kang also wanted to look at his status window, but for some reason he couldn't do it. Maybe he's special, or maybe he's just an ordinary loser. Preparing to connect with another dimension in 5 years will not be easy, especially given the madness that has engulfed humanity. Helen looked at her older brother and felt that this fool felt confident in the new reality. It was as if video games had prepared him for this. Unlike the morning chaos, nothing special happened afterwards, and by evening most citizens had returned to their usual rhythm of life. Thanks to this, in just one day, stability was fully restored in the country, thus ending the first day of the new world. It was time to fall asleep and find himself in another reality again in order to continue his studies. Only now was Kang able to look at his status window. He cannot properly analyze his abilities because he has nothing to compare these characteristics with. He hopes that in the future he will be able to discover some special skills, as well as fully master the resurrection technique. The system told him that he would be able to resurrect a day after his death, but because of this, he would be lowered by 1 level, and all of his characteristics would also be reduced. Now it's time to start the second phase. Regardless of current performance, he can make progress if he works hard. Up until this point, he was very motivated because he had acquired the resurrection skill, and he had no idea what awaited him ahead. In the second stage, a young guy who had always been a fan of video games had to face monsters. Only this time, these monsters were real. He took up arms and began to destroy these vile monsters with incredible zeal, which is what happens when a person is stimulated. In the second stage, he must defeat his enemies and show his skill. Despite the pools of blood, Khan must go forward and kill monsters. With the help of his mace, he skillfully defeated several opponents. But the most interesting thing was that he felt that this was not a dream at all. Everything seemed too real. When he killed the first monster, he felt like he was starting to feel nauseous, something he had never experienced before. His first opponent was a regular goblin, so defeating this monster was fairly easy. Now, in order to continue your progress, you will have to face a stronger opponent. Now he will fight a goblin, but this goblin is a professional warrior. He is twice as strong as an ordinary representative of his race. Now this goblin has his own weapon. His sword is longer than Khan's arm, so if the boy misses even one blow, his ordeal will end immediately. He will have to dance skillfully in order to defeat such a strong opponent, but Kang has no choice but to act. Only now did Kang realize that his body had been without physical exercise for a long time. He had only been sitting at home and playing video games, so now he was not ready for a real fight. His sword was much smaller than his opponent's sword, which immediately caused an imbalance in this confrontation. His physical abilities were at a low level, as were his weapons, so it wasn't long before Khan felt real pain. He just couldn't understand why this big and strong goblin wouldn't kill him right away. Then this dream would finally be over. Khan did not understand how much blood was in the human body until he experienced those terrible moments of battle with the goblin warrior. The fear of death slowly approached him. This fear slowly squeezed his neck. The agony lasted for several hours until his breathing finally stopped. It was a ruthless torture that was arranged by the goblins. But in those moments, Helen saw a completely different dream. She woke up again, frightened, and immediately ran into her brother's room to tell him what had happened that night. She was sure that everything was fine with him, but when she saw the frightened Kang, she realized that he had a much worse dream than hers. He said that he died from blood loss in his sleep. First the goblins tore off his fingernails and toenails, and then they started pulling out his teeth. Kang wanted to continue telling this story, but Helen couldn't listen to it anymore. She also died in her sleep, but this was not the case at all. Helen suggested that her brother go to the hospital. Rumor has it that the number of visitors to the mental hospital has doubled in the last 2 days. She is sure that many people have had similar experiences and will be able to help Kang. The guy assured that he felt better and he wasn't going to go anywhere. The main thing was to continue his studies and become stronger. When he fell asleep, the system informed him that the second round of the second stage would await him. Hearing this, Kang almost died of fear. He started shouting and saying very harsh words to the system, probably because he didn't want to repeat last night's story. He won't get a resurrection penalty while training, which is the only good news lately. He must move forward and do it again. Only through pain and suffering can progress be made. Last time he chose a mace. It seemed like a fairly powerful weapon with great destructive power and simple rules of use. This time, the mace scared the boy, and he decided to choose a bow and arrows, or better yet, a crossbow. Then he mentioned that these monsters can be very difficult to fight, so you will have to bring a sleeping bag with you in order to feel confident in close combat. He approached the monsters, hid in a safe place, and waited for the perfect moment to attack. It seemed like the deed would be done. Khan was sure that now the result of this stage of preparation would be completely different, but his first shot from the crossbow turned out to be inaccurate. He couldn't kill the monster, only slightly scratching its skin, so he would have to switch to close combat. He was able to kill the first opponent with a skillful attack, but completely forgot that he was being attacked by 2 goblin warriors at once. The guy felt incredible pain and immediately woke up in his house. It seems that the second stage has failed again. This time he died immediately. A death without suffering is much better and does not cause such horror and fear. He will have to repeat the second round until he makes progress and can fight these monsters on equal terms. Each time, the guy chooses a different type of weapon in order to find the right approach to the hearts of these goblins. A few hours before bed, he watched a video teaching sword techniques, so he decided to use this particular weapon. He is ready to face monsters and is not at all afraid of death, because every day he conquers this property more and more. Kang has been a true gamer his entire life. He is used to having to constantly go through the same level several times in order to progress. However, real life is not at all like games. Everything happens completely differently here, and the worst thing is that the pain is also felt for real. He is not going to give up and wants to try again and again, although his younger sister is already starting to worry about her brother's mental health. As soon as he started fighting with a sword, he knew nothing and only swung the weapon in different directions. Judging by the status window, this is the standard way to fight monsters, so the system doesn't teach swordsmen any special techniques. It's no wonder that with this approach the guy was only met with continuous failures. He had to find his own way to achieve success. He began to analyze his past mistakes and realized that due to constant swinging of the sword, he was losing too much of his stamina. By the time the real battle with the goblins began, Khan felt too exhausted and was left completely exhausted. I had to change my approach and start training to increase my endurance, which could help during the battle. Now, after this training, fighting the goblins became much easier. But a new problem arose, a lack of physical strength and fighting abilities. Khan defeated several opponents, but then he still met his death, so he had to begin training in the art of swordsmanship. You need to hone all your moves to perfection, because that's the only way to succeed in this round. The system reported that his endurance was increasing due to him trying to push himself beyond his limits. It wasn't easy, but it was effective. Now he has created a basic fencing technique. He has made the desired progress, and has now taken a step forward in his own evolution. Today, these damn green bastards must feel pain. He wants to make them suffer and feel cornered. In the second stage of training, there are 5 terrible goblins. 2 of them are at the beginning of the path. All the others are waiting for the hero in the second half of the forest. Defeating the first 2 monsters is the easiest mission. Khan defeated the first monster with a crossbow, and then killed his partner with a powerful sword blow. The problem is in the battle with the other 3 monsters waiting for him in the forest, because there are more and more opponents, so it becomes increasingly difficult to win. He can destroy 2 monsters just like he did at the beginning of his journey, but the third demon constantly deals an unexpected blow and causes him to fail. This time, Khan must use his new swordsmanship abilities. He begins to feel that his body reacts much better to any threats. He knows how to distribute force across his body and deliver effective blows, which is the skill of fencing. This technique is usually only used by local bandits, but it is much better than the technique that Kang used before. With this technique, he was able to defeat 4 enemies, but the problem is that he spent a lot of energy, and another opponent is waiting for him ahead. The problem of endurance again becomes an obstacle to success. This time, you have to find the strength within yourself and pass this stage at any cost. These horrible monsters truly enjoy torturing people. Khan no longer wants to die, even in his sleep. He grabbed the stone that lay at his feet, deciding that any weapon could help in this battle. This monster had already planned exactly how he would hurt the boy, but it looks like he's the only one who will feel the pain today. Finally, Khan did it. A lot of wasted nerves and constant training led him to success. Although this is only the second stage, it is immediately clear that this guy has potential. He does not know how to give up and is ready to constantly move forward. With the help of success in the second stage, Khan has increased his characteristics. Now he can choose a weapon as a reward. The guy also unlocked the basic shield and crossbow skills. He has moved to a new level and is now ready for new adventures. Now it's time to rest a bit and prepare for the third stage of training. The guy is sure that he deserves a celebratory breakfast in honor of his success. This second round took too long, but the worst is behind him. Soon, all players received a message from the system that the land training was complete. They were now free to use the system outside of training. They also learned that the dungeon has been activated, which means that new adventures and dangers await humanity. No one expected the dungeon to appear. Everyone thought they would train for 5 years while they slept, and that would be the end of all the trials. Now people must get used to the new rules of the game again. If they cannot adapt, they will perish. Only the awakened can use dungeons. Players must clear these areas within a limited time. Dungeons opened not only in Korea, the gates to hell were opened all over the world. The system constantly reminds people that there is less and less time left until the full connection to the Hacken dimension, so players should not waste time and prepare for it. After the appearance of the dungeon, the world became much more chaotic. The brother and sister decided not to leave the house. To start, they decided to look at and systematize any available information. It seems that the training is not quite over yet, so they better not relax. Recently, those who have only recently turned 18 have joined the training. People are very scared about the appearance of the dungeon. Everyone says that this is a hasty decision and no one is ready to clean up these hellish places. There are 8 stages in the training, and while Kong tried to complete the second stage 7 times in a row, other people had already completed all the other stages. Kang is confident that he has made significant progress and will no longer suffer the same unfortunate setbacks as in the past. The guy has no doubt that he will pass the third stage in a few seconds, but now we will see if he is really ready for it. When the third stage began, everything didn't go according to plan from the very beginning. Instead of attacking the boy, the monster decided to soak Khan with its urine. In the third stage, the player must demonstrate his perseverance and patience. If the player waits long enough, he will soon have the opportunity to succeed. In this task, Khan must destroy the leader of the Gurkhas, but first he must find this monster and wait for the right moment to attack. With the help of the system, he learned that his performance had improved significantly after the second stage, and he could now count on even greater strength and endurance. It's also time to check his inventory and feel the power of the sword, with which he can now destroy enemies. Carlos Hascock, a former legendary Marine Corps sniper who successfully killed a general after crawling 14 kilometers over several days. This is the person Kang respects the most, starting today, because he has a very similar task. Towards evening, he found and approached the monster settlement. He saw that 2 guards were constantly guarding their leader. At first, he thought about defeating these guards by force and killing their leader, but he soon saw that one of these guards was approaching him. It seemed that it would be impossible to avoid the battle, but everything went according to a completely different scenario, because the guard did not see Khan and did something unexpected. The guy realized that he was going unnoticed and decided to endure this ordeal, because that's what the system wants from him. He should be persistent and endure anything, but his nerves could not withstand such humiliation. After a few seconds, the guy got to his feet and told this monster that he was going to cut his throat right now. The training effect turned out to be too realistic. The monster's urine had a real smell and made Khan completely lose his mind. He instantly approached his opponent and immediately delivered a powerful blow. It was noticeable that his strength and speed had increased. The other guard immediately started screaming, so all the monsters woke up and prepared to defend their leader. Not even a minute had passed, and Khan was already surrounded and had no chance of getting out of here alive. Feeling that he was in a hopeless situation, the boy realized that he had no other choice but to fight. He started screaming and discovered the lion's roar skill, but it was unlikely that this scream would help him stay alive. Before his death, he was able to take the lives of several warriors from this settlement. But after that, the round was completed. By the way, let's say a few words about the lion's cry skill. This technique reduces the morale of enemies and also adds strength to Khan. In the many hours he spent observing these warriors, he was able to learn something. The warriors of this tribe go hunting early in the morning and return to the village only at sunset. In other words, during the day these warriors are completely exhausted. Most of them are young guys, so defeating such opponents is not a very difficult task. Thus, Khan was able to quickly clear his way to their leader and prepare for the decisive battle. He believed that there would be no problems with this, but one should not underestimate the chief warrior of any tribe. The system immediately reported that Kang was under the influence of a low-level magic suppression skill. Although this is only a low-level deterrent, it is also at the beginning of its evolution, so it is a very serious threat to it. In order to escape these magical chains, he decided to use the lion's cry skill, which had proven itself so well in the past. This really helped to avoid the magic, and now Khan can use his swordsmanship skills against his main opponent. Now he looks much more confident than before. It's immediately clear that the guy has made serious progress. He was able to kill the leader with the first blow and successfully pass the 3rd stage, for which he receives intermediate physical regeneration of Class B as a reward. Khan was also able to set a record for the speed of passing the test and gain the skill of a steadfast warrior. Considering that he spent a whole week on the 2nd test, we can say that he has made serious progress, and now Khan considers himself a genius. He is confident that at this rate of progress, he will be able to complete the 4th stage in just a few minutes. It seems that this guy is starting to believe in his own strength too quickly, although in reality, he is only at the beginning of his long journey. Soon, 25 days had passed since a special detachment of awakened warriors was sent to clear the dungeon. It was claimed that 40% of the dungeons found within the country were cleared with the help of these warriors. Awakened warriors continue to participate in dungeon clearing and do everything possible to make the world safer. The government plans to give these warriors bonuses. These people truly deserve respect and love because they risk their own lives. Kang has been acting too strangely lately, although Helen has already gotten used to her older brother's behavior. He said he wouldn't be able to pass the new test, but today he was able to defeat all his enemies and make significant progress. Recently, Khan has become much bigger and stronger. His muscles are like steel nets that cannot be pierced even with a sharp sword. This training begins to make him nervous. Because of this, his face begins to resemble the face of a thief or even a monster. The 4th stage was similar to a group project. You had to demonstrate leadership qualities and show your full potential. At this stage, you had to destroy the core of the dungeon, and all the while keep an eye on your team members and protect them from any dangers. It was like a role-playing game. The party members acted as NPC, each fulfilling their own role, and Khan was supposed to be the real leader. From the very beginning, he coped with this task perfectly and raised the morale of the team with the help of a lion's cry. Khan was able to take first place with the help of intermediate body regeneration. Everything went perfectly, but this task took him almost a month. The problem is that a good beginning does not guarantee a good ending. After one night, everything went wrong. His team members were supposed to take turns on duty, but instead they decided to escape together. And after Kang caught them, they killed him. He had suspected something like this might happen since they had started flirting with the priest in the dungeon, but he still found himself unprepared for the attack. Characters and situations were repeated in every episode. In such extreme conditions, one had to find a way out with the help of reason. The decision turned out to be truly brilliant. Khan decided to destroy all the team members who refused to listen to his orders. Back to the fourth stage of training, the team is trying to decide what to do next, as their supplies are almost exhausted. Some want to continue their journey and take risks, but there are also team members who suggest turning back and being content with the magic stones they have found. At this point, Kang decided to start shouting loudly and said that now they would all obey his orders and would die if they refused. It seemed to everyone that this guy had completely lost his mind, and the players decided to remind him that this was a team task. Kang could no longer listen to all this empty talk. He decided to act, and act very cruelly. The guy reminded them that he was the strongest on the team and said that everyone would be better off if they recognized him as the leader. Thus, he led his entire team forward towards the dangers, and with the help of his new skills, began to destroy the monsters. The team members were very surprised to see that Kang could single-handedly defeat such strong opponents. They had underestimated him all this time. Soon they found the core of the dungeon they had been looking for all this time. Now all that remained was to destroy this object. Kang said that everything was very simple. He delivered a powerful blow and received a message from the system that the fourth stage had been passed. His stats have increased again, and he has also received some artifacts that may help him in the future. Among these artifacts was the magical stone of the Skeleton Scout and the Skeleton Knight, but it is not yet known how to use these stones. The most important achievement was that in real life he became much stronger and more powerful than before. Now he noticed that bodyweight exercises were becoming less effective, and he needed to change his approach to training. His phone received an urgent message about the discovery of a dungeon near his house. The Ministry of National Security advised the city's residents to stay home and remain calm, as there will be a large number of monsters on the streets. People who didn't see this message were very sorry because everyone who was on the street risked dying a terrible death. If the dungeon is not cleared within a few days, the dungeon gates will be fully open. Kan knows that his younger sister is in danger because she went to work and didn't see the message about the dungeon. He must immediately go outside and save her life. And to do that, he must find some kind of weapon. There are no crossbows or swords in his house, so you'll have to take something very banal to protect yourself from the goblins. Although these monsters seem like fairly simple opponents, they are all armed with swords and axes, which makes them much more dangerous. Kang can't use all of his skills in the real world yet, but his physical attributes can help. Now he no longer respects goblins. For him, they are just trash from the second stage of training. He considers himself much superior to these monsters. The guy didn't even think that now there was no guarantee that they would still remain at the second level. Maybe these goblins could evolve. The battle began, and very quickly Khan tasted blood. When he saw the first monster killed, it gave him extra strength. He enters Predator mode and becomes almost invincible, even despite the lack of special skills in the real world. Very quickly, he killed a large number of goblins with an ordinary knife. It was filigree work, an excellent technique. The head office of the company where Helen worked still didn't know what was happening outside. People heard loud noises and closed the entrance to the room. They believed they were being attacked by bandits. Helen looked confused and immediately wrote to her brother, hoping that at least he could help. Maybe a few seconds later, the building doors were open and a crazy guy walked inside. It was Kang. His whole face was covered in blood, but he still smiled and said that his older brother had come to save Helen. The head of this department immediately started yelling at the guy and said that now their barricade was broken and the monsters could easily get into the building. Kang apologized for his overly aggressive behavior and said that he had not yet learned to control his own strength. However, he assured people that they need not worry, because on the way to them, he had destroyed all the monsters nearby. Everyone was shocked that this guy was able to defeat such a large number of goblins single-handedly without the support of other warriors. It seemed impossible. Although all people on Earth undergo training, in real life they remain too weak. Kan is confident that if they don't panic, they can survive until the dungeon is completely cleared. He advised the office workers to take goblin weapons and defend themselves, while he would go clean up the city streets. He wants to find the other monsters and kill them all. Only then will Kan be able to sleep peacefully. This day seemed too long, but after many battles and adventures, it was finally over. It was almost impossible to avoid injuries, especially considering the aggressive fighting style that Kan chose for himself. It is unknown when the dungeon will be completely cleared. For now, they must be careful and conserve their food and water supplies. So far, the guy hasn't learned how to properly dodge his opponent's attacks, but he's lucky that he has the ability to recover. With this technique, he can withstand a large number of attacks on his body. So far, it is the only skill he can use. It is also unknown whether Kan can be resurrected if he dies in real life. It is too risky to test this during combat. Kang talked to Helen for a long time about everything that was happening. He completely forgot that the 5th stage of training was waiting for him soon. At this stage, you need to demonstrate your wisdom and overcome any difficulties on your way. He found himself among a large number of female warriors and tried to understand what to do next. The conditions of the 5th stage are quite simple. You need to defeat a succubus who has disguised himself as a real person. You need to be careful and not become a victim of this creature. All the women around are incredibly beautiful, and they all need to know about the existence of succubi in this scenario. Recall that a succubus is a dream demon. These monsters appear during sleep and suck out all of a person's life force. Also, these demons are incredibly beautiful, which is the main problem, because all the girls around Khan look amazing. For successfully completing the 4th stage, he received a ring of strong intelligence. Now this ring helps him fight magic. This ring grants immunity to all mental attack effects and protects its wearer from any attacks on the mind. Looking at the fire, Khan recalled all the previous trials, the Circus of Inferno, the battle with the goblins, the attack of the leader, and the group project in Hell. Finally, the time has come when he can enjoy the really interesting things. He smiles for the first time during the test. It must be remembered that Khan must control his facial expressions, because anyone who learns the identity of the succubus will immediately become a target. This creature must be very strong and powerful. The demon can disguise itself as a human, so you have to expect an attack at any moment. Since a man can get caught during a succubus, the demon will use the woman's body, which is called a rational approach. Soon, Kang opened his eyes and realized that his dream was over. Everything around him seemed familiar. He soon realized that he was in the office of the company where his younger sister works. They had been planning to wake him up for a long time, because the army had arrived to clear the dungeon. Kang didn't think about the army and the goblins at all. He was incredibly angry because the succubus must have killed him while he was sleeping. Only then did he fully mentally return to reality and begin to ask about what had happened while he was asleep. He was told that the military had come to the aid of the city's residents and began attacking all the goblins who remained alive. This continues even in these moments, and it seems as if soon all people will be safe. The monsters can't do anything with the professional weapons of the military, but for some reason, Kang is sure that this is not the end. He didn't understand what was happening, but he felt something strange, as if some danger was already approaching him. The army continued to shoot and not stop, but it was not enough as the monsters came closer and closer. A large goblin appeared, who didn't care if they were shooting at him. He turned on the Terminator mode and kept moving forward. It seemed that this creature did not hurt at all. The soldiers began to panic because they had never seen anything like it before. This creature not only ignored all their shots, but also openly laughed, looking them in the face, like a real psychopath. Soon, a huge number of professional soldiers were killed at the hands of this monster. If the situation was not intervened, all the soldiers would die. Kang continued to watch these events from his office, shocked and confused at the same time. Looking more closely, he realized that all these soldiers were being killed by a creature called a hobgoblin. The soldiers tried to resist, but it was either pointless or the opponent was much stronger. Khan could no longer watch the total destruction of the people, so he decided to go down and intervene in the battle. He took a huge rock and hit the monster in the head with all his strength. It was enough to knock it down. Sometimes even professional soldiers need help from ordinary people, although it's hard to call Khan ordinary. When this guy turns on killer mode, he looks like a real madman who doesn't know the word stop. Because of his behavior, some soldiers began to think he was a monster too, so he had to explain that it was all just the aura of a warrior. When the soldier realized that he was standing in front of an ordinary volunteer, he began to thank him for his help, completely forgetting that the real monster had not yet been killed. If the army hadn't arrived in time, this horrible creature would have attacked the office workers where Helen works. It's better not to delay and destroy this monster right here and now, because otherwise it can create even more problems. Khan very quickly agreed with the soldiers to cooperate and ran to attack the monster. He asked them to be careful and not to shoot in his direction, while a frightened Helen watched all these events. As soon as the boy approached the monster, the soldiers immediately went into action according to plan and began attacking with tear gas. At first, the monster ignored all this and focused its anger on Khan, but then the gas began to affect his eyes. It doesn't matter who is standing in front of you, a regular goblin or a hobgoblin in any case, these bastards cannot withstand gas attacks. They don't care about an iron ball, but their eyes can't withstand the effects of such a substance for long. This is their weakness. Kang immediately realized that this was the perfect moment to attack. He was also in pain, but he tried to ignore it. At this moment, a professional awakened soldier appeared in the military unit and came to help. He saw that Kang had already gotten ahead of him and was clearing the area in his place. So far, our main character has had some problems. His sword attacks haven't been helping much. He expected that there might be difficulties, but he didn't know that the monster wouldn't care about the blows of the sword. If this continues, his stamina will decrease very quickly, and he will not be able to continue fighting. It was at this moment that the same awakened soldier intervened in the battle to demonstrate how it was done. He was confident that he would show the young and inexperienced volunteer the difference in their levels, but it turned out that his attacks also did not work. This monster felt no pain at all after the warrior's blows. It felt like a sword attacking a stone. Even though the opponent is very strong, any creature must have weaknesses. You just have to find them. Khan again began to attack with incredible zeal and hit with maximum power. He saw that the hobgoblin had lost his weapon. Perhaps his axe could help in this battle. The awakened soldier also did not stand aside and actively attacked the monster. He tried to cut off its head, but even that did not work. The monster paid no attention to Khan and completely forgot about his weapon. All that remained was to use it to his own advantage. Khan took the demon's weapon and hit him in the buttocks. Not the best technique, but it was better than nothing. All this time he had been trying to find vital points in the monster's body, and just now a philosophical question arose in his mind. The question is whether the anus is a vital point, because perhaps this is the monster's weak point. Of course, there are doubts about this. It is unlikely that a blow to this area will lead to instant death. But Khan decided to try anyway. The monster entered this forbidden zone and smiled because he felt the coming victory. This creature is very strong as a rock, but a hobgoblin cannot have too thick skin everywhere. It was hard to watch, but Khan didn't stop and continued to inflict incredible pain on his opponent. The awakened soldier calmly and focusedly observed these events and did not intervene. He admitted that Kang was a really strong guy and tried to understand where he came from. It seemed like this guy was not registered. After killing the monster, Khan saw an unknown object. The system refused to reveal detailed information because the training was still ongoing. Not understanding what exactly he had found, Kang decided to take the item with him just in case. Normally, all items should be shared with your team, but this awakened soldier interfered without permission, so Kang doesn't want to share. He decided not to wait and immediately started running away, saying that he had very urgent business in the toilet. Finally, he told the awakened soldier that he could take the monster's axe for himself. That should be enough. Maybe in reality, this soldier didn't even want to share items. He just wanted to get to know each other. But that doesn't matter. He took off his mask and continued to think about who this unknown boy who killed the hobgoblin could be. A few hours after defeating the monster towards evening, the situation calmed down a bit. Walking through streets that looked like ruins from a disaster movie, our heroes still felt tense. They were very lucky to be able to return home, although this journey took them a long time. It turned out that Kang was in such a hurry to save his younger sister that he completely forgot to close the door to the house behind him. Helen thought her older brother had grown up, but this situation says something completely different. They decided not to fight, but instead to spend the evening together and regain their strength after a hard day. It turned out that someone was able to film the battle between the monster and Khan on camera and post the video on the internet. The guy couldn't believe that now he was becoming a real star, and that maybe he would start to be recognized on the streets. In the comments, people couldn't understand what kind of superhero this was. It seemed like he was being wounded by a very tall person. Kang's expression immediately changed. He began to feel what it meant to become a famous person. The sister doesn't really like it when her brother acts like a real fool, but she's used to it. After dinner, everyone went to their rooms to get some sleep and continue studying in their sleep. Finally, Khan began to recall the battle with the monster and the awakened warrior, who turned out to be quite strong. He wondered how many stages this guy had completed, because his skills and coordination were at a high level. In any case, Khan is going to fully complete his training and become the strongest of all, and this will require a lot of effort. Yesterday's succubus turned out to be too beautiful. Despite the fact that the monster was able to kill Khan, he still wants to meet her again. As soon as he fell asleep, he immediately began to think that meeting this beautiful girl would lift his spirits. That is why he was so scared when he saw the terrible face of the monster in front of him. Because of this meeting, he almost had a heart attack. A girl should warn when she doesn't wear makeup. While Kang tried to understand what was happening and why his task had changed, the system prepared an explanation. Now Khan must evade a horde of goblins from the cave and defend the dungeon. These cave goblins have very poor eyesight but excellent hearing, thanks to evolution, so we need to find a way to distract them. It is not yet clear why the learning scene has changed, and in the future, Kang must find an answer to this question. For now, let's move to another place and see what happens in the real world. Something terrible is happening in a building in the city center. Someone has arranged a duel with Mortal Kombat. It turns out that someone who hasn't even participated in the training yet can be stronger than the ability user. There's no point in being stronger if you don't know how to transfer that strength into real combat. Soon the 5th stage of training began. You need to defeat the monster's double, which hides among people and eats one of them every night. Paladins and sorcerers can use a unique ability once per day. The system advises taking advantage of this. This task is very similar to finding a succubus. You can also compare this task to playing Mafia. You need to complete this task using wisdom, but Khan may have problems with this. He completely forgot that the person who talks the most is the first to die in the Mafia game. When he woke up, he immediately remembered that he had never won this game because it was difficult for him to keep his mouth shut. Kang couldn't believe he was repeating the same mistake for months. He probably needed a little rest. When Helen returned home from work, she had a hard time recognizing her stupid older brother. He decided to completely change externally in order to bring about internal changes. Something like this always happens to her. As soon as she comes home from work, she sees that her brother has gone crazy again. She sincerely tells him to grow up and stop behaving like a psychopath, but Kang doesn't listen to her at all. They have almost no extra money, but Kang spent the last of his savings to buy himself a new suit. If this continues, Helen will also lose her mind because this is too much. The problem is that it's been 53 days and he's dying every day at stage 5, so it's time to change something. The system prompts you to use wisdom to progress, but the scene is constantly changing. Helen refused to talk to her brother and went to her room looking upset. She was unlikely to help pass the 5th stage. When night fell, it was time to try it alone again, although Khan didn't look ready. Each time the task changes, this time he must completely clear a dungeon called the Tarantula Incubator. You need to find the monster's weaknesses and form the right strategy, but no one promises that it will be easy. Finally, Khan received a fairly simple and straightforward task. He just needs to clear the dungeon and kill the main boss. He feels that he will finally be able to find a way to get through this difficult stage and take a step forward. It seemed like this task would be quite simple, but then the boy felt that poison had gotten on his hands. This angered Kang even more, so he took out his sword and began to act much more aggressively and violently. The system suggested that the tarantula's weak points were hidden in the incubator, and Kang immediately used the hint. He no longer wants to think, but instead wants to complete this task using brute force. All these weaknesses and tips are of no importance. The main thing is to kill the monster, everything else is unimportant. Instead of looking for the key, he decided to break the door and move forward, and this helped him finally pass the 5th stage and receive the power of a giant as a reward. The giant's strength strengthens muscles with magical energy, making the warrior several times stronger within 10 minutes. Many young and inexperienced boys and girls train every night and try to become stronger. As soon as they turn 18, they immediately try to improve their fighting level. After the start of the 5th stage, players have almost no tips for passing. The tasks become increasingly difficult. If a person passes the 4th stage, then he or she already enters the list of the best warriors of humanity. The information is being carefully concealed, but there are rumors that someone passed the 7th stage yesterday and is preparing for the final step. The 6th stage is related to thievery. You need to destroy enemies and allies, and in the 7th stage, demonstrate loyalty. When people on the internet found out that someone had passed the 7th stage, they refused to believe it and called them a fool. It turned out that this fool was our main character, Khan. He decided to share his advice with others, but no one appreciated his advice. He hadn't been this angry in a long time. The guy wanted to do a good deed, but his contribution wasn't appreciated. In any case, when he passes the final stage, he will become the 3rd graduate of studies in Korea. Then, he will begin to be respected. He will rise to the same level as Han, the leader of the Dangun Guild, or Dongwu, the president of the Ability User Alliance. Helen said that it was impossible to compare herself to geniuses who passed the training on the first try, because Khan spent 4 months on it. Soon it was time for bed, the perfect moment to finish my studies. The reward for the 6th stage was the long sword of Bilgun. In the next stage, Khan received the armor of Ronald. If you pass the 8th stage, you will be able to use this inventory in reality, and then Khan will be able to become a living legend. He doesn't expect to pass the final stage on the first try, but if he spends no more than a week on it, then it can be called a success. To begin, the system decided to ask the guy about his beliefs, a question that made Kong think. At this moment, when he looked quite relaxed, the space around him began to break down. He didn't understand what was happening and was quite scared when he started falling into the abyss. Out of fear, Khan jumped up and down, and when he came to, he realized that he was on the street among people. It feels like he's not real. People walk past him and don't even pay attention to him. He sees the city for the first time during his studies. Perhaps now the guy is in a formless state. He looked more closely and realized that he was not on planet Earth at all, because these were not people, but some kind of creepy creatures. They look like people, but they are different from them. Perhaps they are all enemies for him. One of the monsters started looking at Khan, so it was hard to call it a formless state. A little later, it became clear that this creature was not looking at the boy at all, but at the monsters that appeared behind him. Everyone around them began to panic and run away, as if they had not expected the arrival of other monsters at all. Among these creatures are demons that Khan has encountered before, but there are also completely unknown monsters that he has seen for the first time. This is a completely different level compared to what he experienced in the dungeon 2 months ago. It's like being in a movie where an apocalypse scene is being filmed. The system reminded that the time remaining until the full connection with the Hakan dimension is a little over 4 years. So this is roughly what the Earth will look like after this period, and it's not very encouraging news. These monsters will make people suffer, and if we do not prepare for their coming, humanity will be doomed to extinction. The huge monster began to attack, and out of fear, Khan closed his eyes and prepared to die. When he opened his eyes, he realized that he was once again in an unknown white space. The system began to talk to him and ask him how he felt when he saw all these horrible creatures. It feels like God is talking to him, so he probably needs to behave himself politely. This creature said that she was not a deity at all, but rather a dimensional administrator, if you could call it that. At this stage, Khan will have a personal conversation with the administrator. He can ask anything he is interested in. Of course, the guy immediately tried to understand whether everything he saw was really what awaits him on planet Earth in 5 years. The administrator explained that everything would depend on future events, but if she was such a powerful being, why couldn't she stop this situation? In reality, it is only an administrator, not a guard, so this creature only maintains balance. The window of opportunity and the education she gave people was the best thing that could have been done in this situation. The administrator wants to understand what beliefs Kang has and what he has been living for all this time. After all these observations of people, it became interesting to find out what their intrinsic motivation is. All intelligent creatures are quite interesting, but humans are particularly intriguing. Khan explained that no one thinks about their motivation. They just struggle to be a little happy from the moment they are born. They are trying to survive and satisfy their desires, as well as protect their closest relatives and friends. He doesn't want to become a hero. After several deaths, he realized where his place is in this world. The hard work of a hero is not for him. The administrator said that all heroes have talent, but Kang doesn't have this talent, even though she likes him. After these words, the system announced that the conversation time was up. It was time to say goodbye. It's strange, but this is how the 8th stage was completed, so the job is done. Of course, this was just a training period, and new challenges await Khan. The administrator believes that he will be the hero who will save the world, although the guy doesn't really want it. During this conversation, he also guessed that in the 5th stage, the tasks were constantly changing precisely because of the administrator. In the future, they will meet again. But for now, Kang must continue his journey alone. He became the 62nd person to complete the training and receive the title of graduate. Now it's time to return to reality. When he woke up, he saw that he had been sleeping with a sock in his mouth. Helen had been watching him all this time. She knew he would scream, so she immediately did everything she could to keep his mouth shut, even though she could have found another way to do it. Judging by the look on his face, he has failed again. Helen wants to know how long it will take him to complete the final stage. He immediately started laughing and showed her the status window, which indicated that he had graduated. Helen smiled back and said that now he could go and find a job and earn some money. He deserved a delicious breakfast as a congratulations on completing his studies, but it wasn't enough to satisfy Khan. He considers his sister to be too soulless a creature, and now understands why she doesn't have a boyfriend. After how many hours did Helen go to work and leave her brother home alone? After the last stage, his characteristics have increased again. Now he can move on to other things. We remember that in the battle against hobgoblins, he was able to find some unknown object, and now he wants to see how it works. It turned out to be a skill book that allows you to learn the magic explosion skill and shoot a magic sphere with explosive power. Kong looked happy. After 4 months of constant screaming, he had finally mastered the art of screaming in silent mode. Now it's time to get the magic explosion skill. Maybe it will come in handy in future battles. Now he can apply to the Awakened Academy. His life could change completely. Now let's talk a little about a young girl named Mia. She recently got a job and now works for the government. Her first job was at the Awakened Training School, where all the people who have completed the training try to get certified. The country's system of educating awakened people is rapidly developing and becoming one of the best in the world. It is believed that this happened because a similar system already existed, so now newcomers can turn into future heroes. Watching them start their journey is incredibly rewarding, she had thought just a few hours ago. The girl was doing her usual work and began to worry very much. Tears even appeared in her eyes. At that moment, a big and muscular guy named Kang was standing next to her. He showed his personal file. For some reason, this made Mia cry, even though Khan had no idea what was happening. People around started discussing this situation and thought that he was threatening her and making her cry. Some even took out their phones and started filming what was happening. in order to later post it on the internet. Inspector Kim was in this building and couldn't understand why the process was going so slowly. He wanted to find the problem and solve it. As he approached Kang, it became clear that his voice sounded familiar. Perhaps they had met before. Inspector Kim approached and took Kang's file to look up information about this guy. It turned out that Khan doesn't look exactly like the photo, probably because he's changed a lot recently due to his skills. He even assured the inspector that he could do a fingerprint or DNA test. It was no problem for him. Kang also decided to say that he had only gone through 5 stages of training, so as not to attract unnecessary attention. He also decided to lower his current level by half, but the inspector still thinks that Khan is strong enough. After that, the inspector said that if he wanted to receive all the rewards that Kang had received during his training, he would have to obey. Kang must demonstrate all his skills, and to do this he must hurt himself a lot. He made a wound on his hand with the help of his teeth and demonstrated the skill of regeneration. After that, it was time to demonstrate the Ring of Reason that he received in the 4th stage. The strength of a giant has been transformed into that of a human, helping to make his opponents fear him. That day, many people came to the School of the Awakened, some of whom paid special attention to Khan. Most of the awakened ones saw a video on the internet where a guy skillfully killed goblins. It's not hard to recognize that this guy is now in the building with them. Meanwhile, Kang began to demonstrate his skill and instill fear in the minds of those around him. This should be enough for Inspector Kim to finally satisfy his curiosity. After that, Kang was given the importance of going up to the 2nd floor and entering the Hanmu building. The boy, who had been watching Kang all this time, began to smile strangely, as if some mysterious plan had been created in his head. So Kang went up to the 2nd floor, almost being turned away because he didn't look like his photo. After he attracted enough attention, he was given the opportunity to enter the academy, but it seems no one likes him. Everyone thinks he shouted loudly at the woman, and she almost lost consciousness, although in reality, he was just showing off his lion-roaring skills. Soon, Kim came into the office and said that he would conduct training at this branch of the Awakened Training School. The training will consist of 10 days of morning training and daytime practical classes. Students also have the opportunity to eat and live on the academy grounds. It's been 6 months since the world changed, and new information about dungeons and monsters appears every day. That is why tactics and strategies are constantly evolving, as are academies for the awakened. Information can become outdated very quickly, which is why Kim wants to teach students what is necessary for survival. For the next 10 days, you will try to convey valuable information to them and prepare them for independent life in the world of monsters. Khan thinks it's all too boring, like psychological training in the reserve army, and it will all last almost 2 weeks. A big, muscular guy approached him and said his name was Guak, and he wanted to meet him. Kang was surprised to see this muscular pig, but nevertheless decided to shake his hands, and immediately felt the strength of this guy. In fact, Guak came to show his strength from the very beginning and demonstrate who is the strongest here. He has disliked Khan since their first meeting, when he started yelling at him over some little thing. Now Guak is very surprised because this ordinary guy somehow withstands his extraordinary handshake. In fact, Kang had long since activated his giant strength skill, which strengthens his muscles with magical power. This will last for 10 minutes, and already Guak is very close to giving up. Everyone around watched as he couldn't withstand this force. It was a real shame. It feels like his hand is about to snap. Probably shouldn't have underestimated the rookie. Only one person in the office was enjoying what was happening, and that was the same guy who looked like the Joker. Soon doctors had to be called to save Guak from death. When it was time to explain what had happened, Kang said that this muscular pig had first suggested that he try his hand at a fight. He grunted and puffed out his arms and soon burst like a balloon, and Kang had nothing to do with it. I had to tell the giant about my strength, which increases muscle strength several times. Kim was upset by his new student's behavior but allowed him to return to class. When Kang returned to the office, he saw that an unknown guy had sat down next to him. First a muscular pig approached him, and now some freak. It looks like this is a school for the mentally retarded. They met. It turned out that this strange guy's name was Yusan. He just recently turned 18. He successfully graduated from school and wants to make friends. Now he wants to know how Kang was able to do it. He tore off the arm of an incredibly strong guy. It was incredible. He said that everything was completely wrong and he didn't want to talk about it. He probably didn't like Yusung from the very beginning. Due to the slight delay, Kim wants to focus on explaining the key points. Currently, dungeons are divided into 2 types, regular and incomplete dungeons. Regular dungeons are the most common. They are opened a few weeks after they appear, while incomplete dungeons have a different specifics. It is impossible to predict when they will be open, so there are only 2 ways to prevent such dungeons from being opened. One way is with classic cleaning, where you need to find the main core. Another way is to periodically remove regular cores. The second method helps delay the opening of the dungeon, but you need to be very careful with this. Some students are not very happy with such uninteresting information. They did not come here to listen to a boring lecture. There are too many stupid bodybuilders around. It's all starting to get on Khan's nerves, even though he also looks a bit like a muscular pig. Kim immediately said that he would not let anyone interfere with his teaching others, and ordered the boy to go downstairs. The muscular pig immediately found himself next to the teacher. It seems like something very interesting awaits us now. For 1 minute, Kim wants to dodge and block all of this guy's attacks and demonstrate her skills in real-world conditions. If this guy can hit Kim at least once, he will automatically pass the course. If he can't, he will be expelled from the course. Everyone around was surprised and excited. Everyone was curious about how this mini-conflict would end. Now, these two guys already seem quite similar to each other. It's immediately obvious that they both have schizophrenia. The decision was made to start right away. Of course, the pig looks confident and defiant. The guy is confident that within a minute, he will be able to hit the target repeatedly and successfully complete the course. This is a classic mistake of beginners. One should not underestimate more experienced warriors. Attacks that are made through aggression are too easy to predict, so they lose their meaning. Unexpectedness is the basis of an attack, so you need to act quickly and stealthily, even if you attack from behind. Kim also explains that it is important to prepare any attack. Only then will the opponent not expect danger. The muscular guy continued to get angry and throw aggressive punches, but he still couldn't hit the target. He was incredibly angry at the teacher's words. He tried to cut out his tongue, but it was impossible. Attacking with all your strength is not always the best approach. The warrior's movements become more predictable, which leads to additional mistakes and dangers. It's time to end this show and show that muscles are not the main aspect in battle. 1 minute later, Kim demonstrated why he is called one of the best teachers at the academy. It's no wonder that everyone around was shocked and will now listen to him much more attentively than before. A video of a professional boxer dodging the blows of an ordinary person can easily be seen on the internet. It's another matter when it's done against a person who has already undergone training, so even among the awakened, there is a big difference. The speed and reaction that Kim had just demonstrated were extraordinary. It was even difficult to watch. If Kang faced Kim in a one-on-one match, it would be very interesting to see who would emerge victorious. After that, the ocean turned its attention to its new friend. He couldn't understand what was happening with his facial expression. He must really be crazy. He shouldn't have been allowed to sit next to him. People shouldn't have thought they looked alike. The curriculum of the escort training school consists of theoretical classes that take place in the morning and practical classes in the afternoon. Today they will practice weapon handling techniques. Everyone will be able to learn something useful. At first, they train on their own target with their hand, and instructors will help and correct mistakes. Individual classes are impossible due to the lack of designers, which is why Yusan suggested that his new friend train together. The teacher reminded them that sparring is prohibited until the 6th day of school, which seems like bad news for the crazy boys. Soon everyone began training and trying to improve their weapons fighting skills. Kang didn't expect to see any professionalism, but he was surprised that everyone around him was so weak and frail. It seems like he doesn't need practice at all. It's better to practice punches for training. He began to practice his fencer's technique. It was through these movements that he was trained. One of the instructors approached him and said that he needed to change his stance and shoulder angle. Kan didn't like that some instructor was trying to explain to him a technique he already knew well. If this instructor is really that confident in their own abilities, then they can spar. At this moment, Instructor Kim approached them and asked everyone around to listen to him carefully. From this point on, a demonstration sparring session will be held between the student and the assistant instructor. It looks like we'll now see Khan demonstrate his swordsmanship skills against a more experienced warrior. Soon they received permission to begin the battle, and both prepared for a fierce confrontation. Kang is confident that his skills as a fencer are on another level, and he will be able to demonstrate his best sides. After that, no one will try to teach him the technique, because everyone will understand that he is a true professional in his field. That's exactly what happened. After the first blow, the instructor's sword was broken. Everyone around was surprised that an ordinary guy defeated an assistant instructor on the first day of training. Kim reminded that weapons skills should prepare students for real combat conditions. They train their bodies to react immediately to danger, and Khan demonstrated perfectly how to do it. You should never think that theory will help in a real battle. You need to be able to improvise and always look for new techniques. Afterwards, Kim apologized to his assistant and said that it was a bit unexpected, but useful for the students. In fact, he just wanted to test something, the strength of this guy named Khan. Meanwhile, Kang and his new friend continued to enjoy their training and behaved like two psychopaths. Soon, Kang decided that he needed to keep a training diary. This would help maintain discipline. On the first day, he immediately wrote about his fight with a muscular pig, as well as the fact that he had become friends with a guy named Yu Sheng. The theoretical classes were quite boring, and during the practical assignments he felt that he was not getting much benefit. Every day, lessons became less and less interesting, and Khan constantly thought about how he wanted to get home as soon as possible. He used to say that he and Yusung should keep it quiet, but now he's sure they need to come up with something to have some fun. Yusan reminded that today is the 6th day of training, which means that sparring will finally begin. As soon as it was time for practical training, everyone immediately rushed to the central building. In his first battle, Khan confidently defeated another student, while another group began preparing for sparring. For Kang, this doesn't seem like anything special. He believes his opponent was too weak and isn't particularly happy about his victory. It seems to him that all this is like child's play, and the level of his instructors is too low to teach. Although he doesn't quite understand what talent is, he immediately noticed that ordinary people can't easily go through all these stages. The sparring will continue for 2 more days, and while it may seem like a boring pastime for Khan, it's a lot of fun for the other guys. Finally, it was time to show off Yusan's skills. This guy had long dreamed of a sparring period. From the very beginning, he said he was expecting something very interesting. It seemed like he was planning to create some problems. Kang had a bad feeling about this fight, but he was sure that if anything went wrong, Instructor Kim would intervene immediately. A young girl named Yuri will fight against Yusan. She is a witch and will use her personal weapon instead of training equipment. This may give her an advantage due to the lack of space, and it is because of this that Yusan also decided to change her weapon. The witch immediately prepared for battle and decided to use her entire arsenal of knowledge. She was sure that this would be enough for an easy and confident victory, but her opponent immediately stopped her first attack. It was noticeable that Yusan was waiting for this. He had been preparing for sparring for a long time, and dreamed of demonstrating his full potential. Meanwhile, Kang looked surprised. It was his first time seeing magic in real life. It seems that you can learn witchcraft depending on how well you succeed during your studies. The battle continued, and Yusan felt he had to seize the initiative and strike back. Strange things began to happen, as Yusan seemed to be twisting the trajectory of magic and directing it at the instructor. Only at the last moment was Instructor Kim able to dodge the attack, and he began to realize that this was no coincidence at all. Kim looked scared, but the sparring between the students continued, so he didn't intervene yet. This led to a disaster, because it should have been immediately clear that Yusan was a real psychopath. There is no training process for him, even sparring during a lesson he perceives as a full-fledged battle not for life, but for death. This guy turned out to be much crazier than expected. The instructor's assistants immediately called a doctor and reported that one student had serious health problems. A witch named Yuri was seriously injured, with a broken arm and several ribs. All this time, Yusan calmly watched what was happening and got real pleasure from it. He said he made a mistake, and such incidents can happen during sparring, so he doesn't deserve punishment. Instructor Kim understands perfectly well that this is all just a lie, but he decided to take a 20-minute break and think about this situation a little. A little later, he called Cadet Yusan after him, at which point the instructor took out his signature weapon. Kang watched all these events closely. He couldn't help but notice that he had seen this weapon before. Despite this terrible incident, the sparring continued as planned for the next 2 days. Yusan was not even expelled from school. He continued to participate in training. He was noticed as a suspect, so after that the instructors and assistants treated him very carefully. Everyone around was afraid of this guy, and even the doctor came to watch Yusan's sparring. The 8th day of training went without any major problems. Everything was going too well. Kan came to the head instructor and suggested that he arrange a duel with real swords because he was ready for it. The instructor replied that the training would end in a few days, and he would like nothing to distract him from his work. It seems as if he considers all this to be child's play and doesn't want to waste any more time on it. Kang senses that the instructor is also dissatisfied with his job and finds it quite boring. He is sure that they have met before. After this conversation, it was decided to still arrange a friendly sword duel. The instructor admitted that they had already met. Thanks to Kan, last time, they were able to stop the attack of dangerous monsters and save a large number of people. Kim knows that this cadet has reached level 5, but it seems as if he is actually much stronger than he says. A sword like his can only be obtained by completing the 6th level of training. Kang quickly came up with an excuse and said that he found this sword during a cleanup, so he didn't want to talk and tell the truth. We will have to force him to tell the truth. This is the best method of conversation. Kang really wanted to show his best qualities to a willing opponent, but now he may regret his wishes. Realizing that he was facing a fairly strong opponent, the instructor decided not to give the cadet a head start. He immediately demonstrated the incredible physical strength and flexibility of his own body. His speed could also be called lightning fast, but even that didn't scare Khan. It was noticeable that he was really enjoying this sparring. His regeneration skills were restoring his body very quickly. Because of this, he doesn't have much endurance problems, but the instructor is still confident in his own victory. He landed a well-aimed blow and was sure that it would be enough to throw Khan off balance. It was at this moment that this young cadet decided to resort to a new technique and squeeze his opponent's sword with his bones. He started laughing like a psychopath. It seemed like he had been talking to Yu Sheng for too long. Thus, just a few minutes after the start of the sparring, the young cadet defeated the experienced instructor. A little later, they bought themselves some delicious drinks and decided to discuss a friendly sparring match together. Cadet Khan turned out to be very strong indeed, but in any case, they are both about the same level. Soon their conversation ended, and they went to get some well-deserved rest. But that night, strange events occurred. When there were almost no people on the street, you could see a man in a black cloak. He tried to remain unnoticed, as if he were trying to carefully hide something. We will return to this guy in the future, but now let's take a look at how the Academy's cadets are trained at this very place. This place is called the Academy's Training Dungeon. There are geek monsters here. They are quite strong, so don't underestimate them. There are several reasons why this location was chosen as a training dungeon. For starters, aside from monsters, there are no threats here. It should also be said that these monsters do not live rough lives, so they can be destroyed one by one. More detailed information will be available after students enter. This is the first time Khan has entered a dungeon in real life. Before, he could only dream of something like this. When you walk through the doors of this hellish place, you feel a faint whiff of levitation. When the cadets found themselves inside, they realized that this was a completely different world and a completely different reality. This dungeon can be considered an incredibly beautiful forest. It inspires new adventures and makes you forget about fear. First, the instructor wants to lure one of the monsters and give a demonstration, after which the students will be able to repeat it on their own. Kim said that students should move in open spaces because it is easier to fight and defend there. Geika is a bird-like monster. It is a little taller than 2 meters, and outwardly it looks very similar to an ostrich. These monsters have very fast legs and a strong beak. Their attacks can even penetrate iron armor. You have to be very careful with these creatures, because if you lose concentration, you can say goodbye to life in a few seconds. The standard strategy is to surround the monster with partners and tie its legs. The system informed everyone around that the inner core of the dungeon had been removed. The portal had been opened, and now the dungeon would be completely destroyed. All participants in this training must go outside immediately, otherwise they may get stuck in this chaos. The instructor asked everyone not to panic and to slowly pass through the portal, and soon all the cadets were in a safe place. No one understood what was happening and why they didn't even start the cleanup. It seemed like everything didn't go according to plan. Kim also couldn't figure out who exactly cleared the dungeon, but that might not be the biggest problem right now. Seeing what was happening, he immediately asked for backup and also ordered the cadets to immediately find a safe place. This is called a dungeon breach, and he doesn't want the cadets helping him in such a dangerous environment. If the main core is destroyed or removed in a dungeon without killing the boss monster, something similar happens. The dungeon begins to collapse, and all the remaining monsters jump out through the portal. This is called a breakthrough. At first, the instructor wanted to fix everything with his own strength and the support of his assistants, but the situation got out of control. He needed to save the cadets and also contain the monsters, so he asked Cadet Khan for help. He started running away and told Khan to try to stop all these monsters. It seems that's what this guy wanted. A huge number of monsters are approaching him, but on the contrary, he smiles and waits for this magical meeting. It turned out that he wasn't the only one so crazy in this academy, because there was another guy like him. Seeing the danger and adventure, Yuseon lost his mind. He also wants to fight and taste blood. As expected, these monsters are best destroyed with a mace. This was hard to watch, probably because Khan doesn't realize that when he fights monsters, he looks about the same. He must join in the fun and help his new friend clean up the area. We even had to activate the lion's roar so that these creatures would understand who was in charge. A support group will arrive at the breach site soon, but it turns out that all of this can be cleared without much loss, so it's not that bad. A little later, Khan used the magic explosion skill. He can use this technique, unlike other people. He had acquired this skill in the past, and upon seeing this sorcery, Yuseon said he wanted to learn it too. Soon the monster boss finally emerged from the dungeon, a huge mutant geek. The support team has not yet arrived at the scene of the disaster, so now the cadets are starting to have serious problems. It doesn't matter how experienced the students become during their training period, because a boss battle is always a test of another level. At this moment, Yuseon approached his older brother and asked him to give him this gift, but Kang was not going to share the loot. The next day there was an interesting conversation about the upcoming graduation ceremony. During training in the dungeon, an accident occurred. Someone broke in and intentionally caused a breach. There are suspicions that this is a continuation of the terror in the dungeon that has been going on since last month. 2 cadets showed themselves best of all. They were the ones who were able to kill the mutant boss from this dungeon. One of these cadets has incredible physical potential. His strength, speed, and agility on par with the city's best warriors. However, it's hard to call this his strongest point, as healing skills are much more interesting than strength and speed. His partner belongs to a completely different type of warrior. It is unclear whether he can be called a genius, but he has incredible fighting instincts. This guy's quick reflexes and technical prowess are truly amazing, but his excessive brutality is a major drawback. Instructor Kim rarely gives someone such a convincing description. He must have already made a job offer to these two cadets. He is now talking to the leader of the Dangun Guild, a girl named Hana. We already talked about her a little earlier. She asked the instructor to return to the guild quickly, because she thought there was something strange about this incident. Soon, all the academy students were congratulated on completing their studies and thanked for their work over the past 10 days. The academy members hope that all students will become wonderful people and be able to protect the country from dangerous monsters and demons. When the two friends left the academy after the ceremony, they were met by a personal driver. He invited them to get into the limousine, and Kang immediately thought that his friend Yu-sung was born into a wealthy family. Kang has never been in such a nice car, but he doesn't need to rush just yet, because Instructor Kim wants to talk. There was a dungeon breach incident yesterday. Both students should be rewarded for helping the academy contain the threat. After that, Inspector Kim said goodbye and said that Kang and Yu-sung would definitely call soon. It is already obvious that these students are incredibly strong, and soon they will meet again in the dungeon. But they should not forget about responsibility, because now they are professional warriors who must first and foremost think about protecting humanity. Soon Kang returned home and got his license. He was happy, even though he looked like he wanted to kill someone. He talked to his sister and told her that tomorrow he would go through all the dungeons, although he didn't know how to find them yet. Rumor has it that there's an app on the phone for ability users called Radar, so it can help find dungeons. In the past, Kang spent too much time playing video games, and his sister believes that during this period he lost his mind and now cannot do anything on his own. The reward for completing the lowest level dungeon is a fairly large sum of money, which can be enough to change your life. The magic stone attracts attention as a new source of energy, and we must not forget about the items that drop from monsters. Soon Kang began clearing dungeons and earning a lot of money, and he immediately began helping his parents. His father is surprised that his son has started earning so much. He used to have problems finding work. The mother is constantly worried about her son. She has already heard that people get injured and even die in the dungeons, and therefore she doesn't want this to happen to her Khan. The father, on the contrary, is not worried. He believes that it is better to die than to be a gamer and do nothing all his life. It was at these moments, when the parents were discussing their son, that Kana was in another dungeon. He continued to destroy all the monsters around him and improve his weapon skills. As before, this guy got incredible pleasure when he saw the blood of his opponents in front of him. Sometimes he even started laughing out loud as if he were auditioning for the role of the Joker. By that time, he had already managed to buy himself a brand new luxury car, and now Kang had forgotten about his money problems. The mother tried to call her son, but he left his phone in the car and didn't answer. She decided to call him to tell him about something strange that had started happening near the local supermarket. The father was against it. He believes that his son should not be worried, because professional military personnel should solve these problems instead of him. It was at these moments that the dungeons that had been formed near the local supermarket finally opened up. From there, the orc warriors came out along with their boss, and now they are a real threat to the city of Seoul. The central core of the dungeon was removed, and the portal to the outside opened, meaning that Khan had done his job perfectly. He cleared the dungeon in just one day, but he already plans to continue working and destroy a few more monsters. He saw that he had a lot of missed calls on his phone, called his sister, and found out that their parents were having problems. It is not known exactly what Helen told him, but judging by the expression on his face, something very bad had happened. The government stated that it would make every effort to resolve the problem of the underground breach as quickly as possible. In connection with the large-scale incident, the Ministry of National Defense began working with groups of civilian ability users. They have surrounded the area in order to stop the threat, but the residents, who find themselves in an isolated area, are starting to worry more and more for their lives. The Dangun Guild stated that it would actively participate in rescue operations, and was also prepared to come to the aid of the parents. He can't sit idly by and wait for someone else to save them. He's been trained to become stronger, and now he has to take responsibility. The sister is worried about her older brother. She asked him to be careful and not do anything stupid, even though he is a master at it. Kang promised to bring his parents home and set out to face dangers that could be the hardest test of his life. When he arrived at the right area, the soldiers forbade him from passing further. He had to get his certificate of a trained soldier to confirm his identity. The soldiers had to let the boy go, but they were surprised that he came alone, without his team. They are not going to be responsible for his future. He must decide for himself what to do. At the moment, there are already 5 confirmed open dungeons. The main thing is to arrive on time and hope that everything is fine with your parents. If monsters appear on his way, it could delay the guy and then something terrible will happen. Within seconds, a huge boar forced him to stop and get out of the car. You'll have to dance a little with this monster. Otherwise, it's impossible to get to the right area of the city. Kang has only recently bought his car, and now he wants revenge on this creature for the damage it caused. He doesn't even suspect that this huge boar is not the only monster in this area. An army of goblin warriors is already advancing. Just when he thinks he's forgotten about these monsters, they appear and start causing trouble. He doesn't have time to fight all these scoundrels right now, so he better run away and find his parents right away. Although it will be difficult to do, because the huge wild boar is not going to let him go. If they want to fight, they should fight among themselves, because after losing his precious car, Kang is in no mood. A lot of time has passed, but he still hasn't found his parents and is quite far from their home. His phone is almost dead now, so he has to conserve battery and walk with his flashlight off. It seemed to him that by morning he would be able to reach his destination, but at that very moment the boy felt the approach of an unknown creature. His reactions are still at an incredible level, so he was able to turn around and deliver a powerful blow with his sword. It turned out that it was a wolf who had come to enjoy a delicious meal of human flesh. So now it's clear that there are even monsters that can become invisible. It's unlikely that Khan will be able to sleep peacefully. This wolf did not come alone. He has his own team ready to take revenge. In fact, wolves are the only creatures that truly know what revenge is. But even their large numbers did not help these creatures stay alive. Khan caused a massacre with his sword and took the lives of a huge number of monsters. He washed himself in their blood and smiled with burning eyes. At such moments, this guy looks worse than any monsters. There were a large number of wolves in this forest, so we had to fight them all night long. It wasn't until sunrise that the last opponent was destroyed, so the boy had almost no time for a full rest. He must hurry and find his parents if he wants to save them in time. Before leaving for them, he wrote a message and asked them to be careful and not leave the house. There are huge communication problems right now, so they can't call their son, and they can only hope that everything will be fine. Yesterday, a huge number of orc warriors appeared in this area. Now the life of any person is in danger. The father turned around and decided to look out the window. Maybe the soldiers had already cleared their street. He hoped for the best, but he couldn't even believe that his son had already come to the rescue and was skillfully killing everyone around him. It was hard to recognize Kong for a moment. He was covered in enemy blood and smiling like a madman. Very quickly, the arcane destroyed 10 orcs, but reinforcements came to their aid. This dungeon turned out to be of a higher rank than expected. But for Khan, the main thing was to save his parents, no matter what price he had to pay for it. He loudly asked them to stay home and not go outside, and the parents were surprised to see how much their son had changed in the past few months. He changed not only externally but also internally, because before he was an ordinary and rather poorly developed boy. Now he looks incredibly strong and confident, which becomes noticeable when he challenges a whole group of monsters at once. Over all these months of constant training, he has managed to master the swordsman's technique. Now with the help of a sword, he can do truly amazing things. You should also pay attention to improving his instincts and reflexes. It has become even harder to hit him. And of course, we can't forget about regeneration skills, because even if you kill this guy, he'll still rise from the dead. Even medieval vampires can envy his bloodlust. This guy is truly obsessed with killing. He will have to do something impossible to get out of here alive, because the orcs are becoming more numerous every minute. Along with this army of orcs came their own, a great and powerful general, with a terrifying smile. Until the last moment, Khan tried to save his magic for regeneration, but now he will have to use the power of a giant. He also needs the help of the lion's cry. With the help of all these techniques, he will be able to fully express himself in this battle. It seemed that way until he started fighting the boss and realized that this huge general was too powerful. From the very beginning, it seemed that self-confidence would be enough to defeat the orcs, but the number of these monsters is too high. His body is no longer recovering, probably an indication that all magical energy has been completely used up. He's not even sure he can survive this battle, but Khan can't back down because he has his family behind him. He is ready to challenge this boss to the death, or until he cuts off his head. The parents watched all these events. They were shocked, and did not even suspect that monsters were approaching them too. Yaka tried to save them, but a huge pack of orcs held him back and prevented him from escaping. As soon as it seemed that he could escape their pursuit, the boss immediately got lost in the situation. The situation was really getting out of control. Kang felt the strength leaving his body, and he was losing consciousness. It was the most difficult moment in his life, and just when it seemed there was no way out, something like a miracle happened. An unknown warrior appeared and began attacking the boss and causing him serious problems. Looking closer, we can recognize a girl named Hana, the leader of the Dangan Guild. She didn't come alone, but together with other warriors from her guild, they had already managed to clear the surrounding area. Now they are ready to evacuate the wounded, as well as clear the last streets of the area. These monsters caused enormous damage to the city, but someone gathered all the orcs in one place, and thanks to this, saved a huge number of lives. Now they understood who had held back the monsters and fought alone until they arrived. But unfortunately, this guy died, so now he needs to be buried. Hana was sure that after such a beating, Kang would not survive. But after a few seconds, she realized that his body had disappeared somewhere. Soon, Kang opened his eyes and tried to understand whether he was dead or still alive. He ended up in the same tree where he had fallen asleep after the battle with the wolves the previous night. He was resurrected a day after his death, which will cause him to lose 1 level of training and half of his abilities for the next 24 hours. If the place of resurrection is not specified, then the resurrection occurs at the last point of the dream. A day has passed since the last events, and he must immediately go and find his parents to make sure they are okay. He feels incredibly tired and weak. This is due to the loss of level, but it is temporary. After 5 hours of hard running, he finally saw the destroyed area of the city, which had turned into a wasteland. Kang walked around trying to figure out what had happened and saw a military base, where he found a phone and was able to call his younger sister. Only then did he learn what had happened to his parents. His mother was in a coma, and his father had lost his arm. It was hard to accept, but such is the reality. After these events, time sped up and 2 months passed. The Dangun Guild went hunting in the dungeons of the Haiji Plain, and the guild leader Hana said that new high-ranking dungeons had recently appeared. Soon, Khan was back to clearing the dungeon. He had already died 3 times this week, but it wasn't a problem for him. His sister tried to tell him that what happened to his parents was not his fault, but he didn't want to listen. I had to admit that he still felt guilty. Maybe it would only get easier after a while. Recently, the city has begun to experience constant problems with cleaning out dungeons. These dangerous rifts were increasing every day, but a large number of warriors were ready to clear the perimeter and rescue people. Every day they destroyed monsters and increased their level, sending elites to particularly difficult places, ready to destroy strong bosses. This guy plans to reach level 35 and join the Dangun Guild. He has long dreamed of becoming the strongest warrior in the world. At this moment, a group of warriors saw an unknown guy approaching them with a weapon in his hands. They were surprised that he came to the dungeon alone and immediately went to battle against the boss. They went after him to save the boy, not even realizing that he didn't need anyone's help. Kan activated a skill called Wayne's Secret. When activated, all of his skills, except for mana, are increased by half, but his body begins to decay. Wayne is a mad warrior who lived only for the sake of battle and died during the war. All his life he sought challenges and found incredible strength at the cost of destroying his body. With this skill, you can easily destroy a huge number of monsters at once, which is exactly what happened in front of other warriors. They couldn't believe that this guy without support was able to do this. If someone had told them about it, they wouldn't have believed it. He only received this hidden technique yesterday. Wayne's Secret goes perfectly with his regeneration skills. He would have serious problems if he didn't have body regeneration, which helps repair injuries with magic. He took the core and ordered all the other soldiers to immediately clear the way for him so he could return home. It turned out that the guy wasn't going to collect magic crystals from these corpses, considering it a waste of time. They decided to ignore him and take all the crystals for themselves, which would help them make a lot of money. Rumors began to circulate that this could be the same guy who has been single-handedly clearing the dungeons for the past few months. After completely clearing this gorge, it was time to look at the reward that Khan received. This item is called the Antler's Cloak, a skill book, for creating a special technique. When activated, it can strengthen your skin to an incredible level. Wayne's Secret and body regeneration absorb too much mana, so this technique can come in handy. Using multiple skills at the same time is not always the right decision. You need to think and use your strengths wisely. You should never lose your cool, and you should also forget about feeling guilty towards your parents and move on. At any cost, Kang wants to become stronger, and he is sure that now no one will stop him on the path to success. Soon he emerged from the dungeon and finally saw the main character, about whom he had been talking so much lately. Kang wasn't used to the attention of journalists, so he was uneasy when he saw everyone trying to take his picture. He was asked to give an interview and explain what was happening, but he only asked them to step aside and not interfere. One of the reporters tried too hard to stop Kang, and because of this, he almost said goodbye to life. This guy is too antisocial to give interviews. He thinks it's all just a waste of time. He recently bought himself a new car, but recent events prevent him from fully enjoying life. Soon, an unknown man approached him and gave him a business card associated with an association of ability users, belonging to a man named Sun. This association has been watching Kang for a long time. If he joins them, they will be able to show him all-round support. The association does not force him to answer right away. He can call at any time. We need to stop at this point and talk a little about the Ability User Association because it's quite important. Unlike guilds, which pursue only their own goals, this organization advocates for the rights of the awakened. I've never heard of these people recruiting other awakened people to their team. Maybe an exception was made for him. Right now, the biggest problem for Kan is his mana level. He's been using up too much energy lately, so it's hard for him to regain his strength. He decided to buy several artifacts. This could increase his level of training and give him additional opportunities during battles with monsters. He doesn't want to waste money on unnecessary items because he wants to buy something special, artifacts that really deserve his attention. The next day he found himself in Kanami, where there is a rank E dungeon called the Goblin Village. If you defeat the local shamans, there is a high probability of obtaining a ring that increases magical power by several levels. At first, only a few people knew about this place, and they all recruited farm parties to make some extra money. They were recently pushed out of here by other people who called this their place. But the government doesn't care about anything that happens here, as long as the monsters don't get out. When Kang reached the entrance to the dungeon, he saw that no one was there. No one was even guarding the entrance. He was surprised, but decided not to pay much attention to it, and continued on his way forward. He entered the dungeon portal and soon found himself inside, in an area that looked like a jungle. There he was, immediately met by 3 warriors who, although armed, did not look like anyone dangerous. They immediately tried to explain to him that this place belonged to the Bait Guild, and he had better get out of here immediately. If he wants to stay in someone else's territory, he must pay handsomely, and then they will let him live. We all know that Kang is not used to idle talk. He's a man of action, so he likes to do something, not talk. That's why he immediately showed who was in charge, so that these soldiers would shut up and get away from him. They turned out to be not very timid and prepared to kill this impudent snotty. They expected an easy battle, and did not even suspect that in front of them was a true master of martial arts and ancient techniques. Only at the last moment, when the 2 boys were already in critical condition, did the girl ask Kang to calm down and stop. She wanted to use a technique, but Kang said he could teach her something better. Within seconds, she was screaming in pain and begging him to stop, but that only encouraged him to continue. Soon, other warriors from the Bait Guild appeared near Khan, having come because they heard the screams of their friends. Now they are sure that this newcomer will not get out of this dungeon alive, and will pay for his impudent behavior. They also have no idea that this madman could easily rip off their heads and eat them alive. The training completely changed the life of the guild leader Bait, as he realized that the dungeon is a world where only power, cruelty, and money matter. Until last year, he was nothing more than a man abandoned by life, a downtrodden boy with no future. But now everything has changed. He became the leader of a large guild and now has wings that help him fly. While he is in the dungeon, he can fear nothing, because here he is the true king. This guy probably overestimated his abilities too much. He could have been king. But after Kang came here, everything changed, because a new king appeared. Within seconds, the guild leader was lying on the ground, trying to understand what was happening. All his comrades lost consciousness, but Kang still stood calmly and controlled the situation. He only missed one blow, but that blow turned out to be quite dangerous and almost took his life. However, as we have already understood, to kill this guy, you have to do something impossible, because he has a talent for resurrection. Khan decided to hold a short interview and choose a new leader. He ordered all these warriors to change, start a new life, and forget about their bad deeds. Anyone who is not willing to agree to these conditions must be immediately and severely punished. He chose the only guy who behaved adequately. This young warrior's name was Wu. It cannot be said that all dungeons are similar to this place. Some types of gorges can reach the size of a large city. This dungeon seems huge. It feels like they're going in circles and can't reach their destination. Wu tried to avoid the monsters and find the right path, but Kang explained that facing monsters was much more interesting. Soon they organized a vacation and decided to cook something delicious for dinner. Although Kang doesn't really trust his new assistant, perhaps they can become friends in the future. As they started dinner, they started talking about various things. Wu said that he was 25 years old. Before he woke up, Wu was an ordinary guy who went to college and lived an ordinary life. He decided to become a soldier because he had no money for a normal existence, and the costs of training were constantly increasing and accumulating. He constantly tried to find the best way to earn money, but there was always not enough money even for the most important needs. His father's business failed, and the family began to starve. The whole story is very sad, but Kang said that he was not going to listen to this nonsense. He ordered his guide to be quiet and rest, for new adventures awaited them tomorrow. At night, when Kang fell asleep, Wu woke up and realized that this was his chance to kill his enemy and escape. He remembered what had happened this morning, and an internal struggle began in his head. He soon realized that he couldn't kill a person while they were sleeping, and decided to simply run away. It turned out that Kang was not sleeping at all. Without raising his head, He turned to his guide and said that he should stay. If Wu tries to escape, he will be killed, so he has no choice but to stay. The very next morning, the boys woke up and continued their journey. The guide showed them where the goblin village was located, and that's where the core of the dungeon could be found. Kan also felt a concentration of magical power in one place. His sensitivity to such moments is very high. Wu tried to act calm. He was sure that soon everything would be over and he would finally be free. It seems that this guy had a plan in his head last night on how to get rid of Kan. Maybe he wants to lure him into a trap. And besides goblins, all monsters are concentrated around the core, but from time to time they send out reconnaissance groups to neighboring territories. The Bait Guild had been attacking scouting groups all this time, which is why he was well acquainted with this area and the behavior of the goblins. The guide was sure that Kan would not be able to survive the battle against the monsters. There were so many of them that they would destroy him. When they arrived at the village, the boy was already starting to rejoice at the upcoming victory, but it seemed that Kan was not going to die. This guy is a real madman. He is ready to challenge an entire army of goblins and fight for several days in a row. At this point, realizing that Kang was completely distracted, Wu gave him the middle finger and started to run away. He said he was glad to meet her and hopes they never meet again, but that's jumping to conclusions. Kang warned that if this guy tried to escape, he would definitely die, and it was unlikely that he would break his promise. Meanwhile, Wu tried to find a safe place, and was sure that Kang would not be able to avoid death in the battle against the goblins. He was very surprised when the system reported that the inner core of the dungeon had been destroyed, and the exit portal had been opened. In the Goblin Village dungeon, all the monsters are located around a central core, meaning it's not exactly a classic layout. Wu couldn't understand how this guy was able to defeat the monsters and destroy the inner core, especially since he did it without support. The goblins' numerical superiority was overwhelming, but somehow this boy was able to find a way to victory. It seems as if he, like a fire-breathing dragon, burned everything that stood in his way. Wu understands that Kang is strong, but he could never have guessed that he was capable of something like this. Against an entire army of monsters, it is always important to properly defend and choose a smart strategy. Of course, we must not forget that at the right moment we cannot hesitate, but on the contrary, we must act very confidently and selflessly. If the warrior can withstand all the monster attacks and reach the boss, he will have the opportunity to win and completely clear the dungeon. This is a very dangerous strategy, where even the slightest mistake can lead to complete failure. All this time he thought that Kang was just an ordinary martial artist, but now he realized that he had underestimated him too much. In some incredible way, Khan was able to destroy the goblin army and punish their main boss, his power beyond imagination. Khan received a magic crystal from a demon shaman, as well as a goblin ring that can enhance his magical power. He has achieved his goal and can now find Wu and avenge his betrayal if necessary. When he exited the portal and returned to the real world, he saw that almost the entire Bait Guild was waiting for him. Among all these people, he immediately noticed his guide. Fear was visible in his eyes. Kan smiled and thought that in 30 minutes he could destroy them all and get a little warm up at the same time. At that moment, an unknown guy approached him and said that there had been a misunderstanding. They hadn't come to fight, but to talk. The guild members apologized for their behavior and attack on Warrior Kang, as personally communicated by the guild boss of Bait, Warrior Zhong. He decided to speak directly and immediately invited Khan to join his guild. He guaranteed maximum support and a large reward. John understands that he must get his guild this talented warrior at any cost. With his help, they will be able to become the strongest in the country. Kan immediately refused, but the guild boss had expected this, so he decided to give him his business card. Everyone around him found it hard to believe that Kay, upon receiving this insect business card, immediately tore it up. He said he wasn't going to be a good guy and would always behave bluntly, even with respectable people. He is not going to join the guild of weaklings and slugs who do not deserve his respect. It was noticeable that with every passing minute, Kang was losing control of himself. He approached Zhong and invited him to fight. The guild leader only smiled nervously and said that they had come to negotiate, not to shed blood. Kang replied that he was not going to talk to Kim, and that he was already used to working alone. Soon he got into the car and drove towards the house. Only now did he realize that the situation was quite critical. He had lost a large amount of mana in the dungeon, so if he started fighting against the Bait Guild, he had every chance of defeat. He even forgot to take revenge on the guy named Wu, but he is sure that the opportunity for revenge will arise in the future, and then he will kill the leader. Meanwhile, the guild learned that he personally helped Khan clear the dungeon. One of the soldiers told his boss about all this, and now this leader faces severe punishment. Within seconds, he was killed by a large and sharp sword, which is what happens to traitors in the Bait Guild. John said that no filthy slug who betrayed his guild should continue his life. It was cruel, perhaps even too cruel, but in any case, this execution was exemplary. All guild members have seen what happens to people who go against their friends and break the rules. After that, Jung ordered his assistant to find out all the information about Kang and monitor him more closely. It turned out that at this point, the Bait Guild had already begun to follow a special warrior, but this could lead to serious problems. In fact, the guild leader is not at all afraid of critical situations. He was offended and believes that no one has the right to refuse his offer. John is sure that he will be able to find an opportunity to punish this too smart and strong boy. Maybe it would involve doing something bad to his family, but for a freak like John, it's a common thing. He is ready to do even the worst things in order to subjugate others to his power. That's the kind of person he is. A brother and sister went to dinner at a neighboring restaurant. They hadn't spent time together in a long time. Kang believes that besides helping his family, money should be spent on delicious food. Everything else is irrelevant. According to the doctor, their mother is getting better, her condition is stable, and she may soon return to normal life. Helen has long noticed that her brother always looks too strange and embarrassed, so now she is glad that he is smiling. After a short conversation, Kang felt a pain in his stomach and immediately ran to the toilet. On his way back, he saw an unknown man approaching his younger sister. As soon as he returned to the table, the man immediately turned around and walked away. At first, Kang didn't pay much attention to it. He thought that his sister had met a handsome guy, and that was good. Only then did she explain that this man had come to give Kang a note. This letter said about an invitation to the Bait Guild. Kang was very surprised, but he had no intention of joining this guild, so he forgot about the letter and returned home. In the evening, he said he was going to the nearest store and buy himself some beer. There were almost no people on the street. It was dark, but in such conditions, Kang felt quite comfortable. He remembered the Bait Guild again and began to think that these people might be planning something very bad. He's afraid they might hurt his family. Maybe he should forget about the dungeon for now and be home more often. At a moment when he was thinking about the safety of his family, his father called him. He said that his mother had regained consciousness and was feeling much better. The father also told them that a friend of Kang's came to visit them. He said his name was John and brought some fruit with him. As soon as Khan heard this terrible name, he immediately realized that the guild leader was trying to intimidate him with his actions. The next day, two friends met in the city center. One of them was Mia. We had seen her before. They greeted each other and discussed their recent weekend, when a girl who looked like a warrior approached them and brought them coffee. She said that it's not difficult for her to do something good because she does it of her own free will. After that, she bowed and left. The girl is considered a little strange, but she seems like a good person. Mia remembered that not all people who look strange behave well towards others. There were moments in her life when she met strange guys who turned out to be real psychopaths. Now these guys are her nightmares. Maybe soon she will have to face her horrors in real life. Soon, Khan appeared behind the girls, looking so terrifying that the girls almost fainted from fear. Kang asked them not to scream and to calm down. There was no need to call the police because he had come to find Instructor Kim in order to protect his family. The girls explained that Kim only occasionally acts as an instructor, so he is not at the academy right now. Judging by recent events, the rate of dungeon spawning continues to increase, so Kim believes that it is necessary to attract upgraded warriors to help. The meeting continued, but Kim's assistant entered the office and said something strange had happened. An unknown person demands that a meeting with Kim be arranged for him immediately. It soon became clear that it was Kong, and the two finally met and were able to talk. When Kim said they would see each other soon, he couldn't even have predicted that it would happen so quickly. Kan immediately explained that he needed help. It was related to the Bait Guild, because they had started blackmailing his family. He needs someone who can protect his family while he destroys these rats like Kim. The instructor explained that this guild has a pretty bad reputation, but the problem is that there is no evidence against them, so it will be difficult to stop them. That is why Kang decided to destroy them completely. He had long ago formulated a plan for cruel revenge in his head. Instructor Kim is the strongest person he knows, which is why he chose him as his assistant. He is willing to pay generously for help, but Kim doesn't need money. He makes good money in the Dangun Guild. If Khan really wants to get this warrior's help, he shouldn't offer money at all. At first, I didn't understand anything and thought the instructor wanted to use his own body. It's hard to explain how he came up with this idea. Kim had to step in and explain what he meant. He wants him to agree to meet with the boss of the Dangun Guild if the operation against the Bait Guild is successful. Soon the negotiations ended, and 5 guards outside and inside the hospital began guarding Kang's parents. 5 security guards also patrol Helen's younger sister's workplace to monitor her safety. Such security measures were chosen in order to have insurance in the event of an emergency election. Now it's time to head to the Bait Guild and destroy these rats once and for all. There are many professional warriors in that building, but Khan wants to go there alone. He said he couldn't explain all his plans, but he would be back alive and well by tomorrow. The guy said goodbye to his friend and decided to meet at the Bait Guild. John had been waiting for this day for a long time. They are happy that Kang decided to become a member of their big family. Everyone came to congratulate him on this. Actually, Kang didn't come here to talk. He came to taste a juicy fruit called revenge. After the lion's cry was activated, a magical explosion occurred, and everyone scientifically understood that the disco would now begin. They believe that this crazy guy will cause a lot of problems again, so he needs to be stopped immediately. Let us recall that Kang came all alone, and opposite him was a huge number of professional warriors. In order to win this battle, he will have to activate the Wayne secret technique, the giant's power, and the one-strike technique. All this had to be done simultaneously, otherwise there would be almost no chance of success. After the explosion, Khan felt that the effect was much stronger than expected. He was lucky that he used the bricklayer's cover skill. This technique allows you to strengthen your skin and survive an explosion, but it seems that the explosion was not enough to destroy the guild boss. Strangely enough, Jung was still smiling. He asked Kang to calm down and, before it was too late, become friends with him. He immediately apologized for visiting his family and explained that it was not related to blackmail. If they can join forces, they will have the opportunity to take Dangon's place at the top. Inside this building are 200 professional warriors, and they also have branches throughout the country. All they need is to find the face of their guild and the strongest warrior who will lead everyone else forward. Khan refused to listen to all this nonsense and openly spat in his enemy's face. He said that it all sounded like the notes of a mentally retarded guy, and he didn't want to listen to it anymore. This behavior was hard to bear. John realized that this fool could not understand all his lofty plans. After that, he ordered all his warriors to immediately prepare for battle and kill this miserable worm. If he doesn't understand good attitude and interesting offers, he should die a horrible death. Realizing that the situation was getting out of control, he immediately activated the lion's cry and used the ring of strong mind to protect against mental attacks. The stats and morale of his enemies were immediately lowered, making them easier to attack. He had long wanted to see how the anthill's cover stopped magic attacks, and now was the perfect opportunity to do so. His skin has become much stronger, and if he can withstand all these magical blows, he will be able to seize the initiative. The warriors of the Bait Guild began to attack. They believed that their numerical superiority would easily translate into a quick victory, but this was not the case at all. Having withstood the strongest magical blow, Khan struck back and real chaos began in the building. After just a few hours, it was physically impossible to work in this place. It looked like ruins. Inside, you could find a huge number of corpses and mutilated people, but that's not the end. John is still alive. He laughs and demonstrates his confidence in overall victory. Now he sees that Khan is just as much of a murderer as the members of the Bait Guild. It seems he wants to put pressure on Khan's sense of justice, but this psychopath doesn't pay any attention to any of this. At this moment, when he was exhausted, the Bait Guild decided to strike a fatal blow. Very quickly, Kang realized that he had been seized by some unknown force, and soon he felt a sharp blade pierce his body through and through. He realized that this was the end. This battle had lasted quite a long time, but it could not end in victory. After so many serious injuries, Khan still continues to breathe. Even the guild boss respects him. He would gladly replace all this garbage called professional warriors with a fighter like Khan. But he has known since childhood that animals that cannot be controlled are completely meaningless. We will have to show this animal that there are forces in the world that are much stronger than its capabilities. Khan immediately felt incredible pain and began to scream and think about his imminent death. It turned out that the guild boss also has strengths and special skills. He is not a weak boy to beat at all. He was soon told that 30 warriors had died, and 50 were left with serious injuries, all after a battle with one man. It seemed that the deed was done, but soon the assistant reported that Kang's body had disappeared, although just then the boy was lying in front of them. Soon, our protagonist was successfully resurrected once again. His level was lowered, and all abilities were halved for the next 24 hours. Let's fast forward 2 days and see what happens in the dungeon of the Bait Guild, called Cake's Gorge. The guards are bored. There have been no people at all lately, probably due to the risk of losing equipment, as well as fear for their own lives. A large number of people have already heard about the terrible deeds of the Bait Guild, so no one wants to work with them. Soon the guards saw an unknown guy in a mask and a strange costume approaching them. He looked like some fool from a masquerade in Rio de Janeiro. They decided not to pay much attention to him. After Kang suffered his last setback, he realized where what was important was. His actions were no different from throwing eggs at a stone. Of course he's glad he has an infinite supply of eggs, but he doesn't want to constantly pay the penalty for resurrection. It's much easier to destroy these miserable slugs alone. He decided to come to the dungeons belonging to the Bait Guild and clear them alone. He soon learned that the guild members were dealing with dungeons that had no surveillance cameras. That's why they can't tell him any unnecessary information, so there's no point in leaving them alive. In this situation, Kang perfectly demonstrates his cruelty towards his enemies, but one must admit that he can be understood. Soon, all the news reported that monsters had broken free in the building of a popular guild. When Jung found out about this, he was incredibly angry because he had to pay a lot of money to stop the panic on the streets. Soon he was informed that Khan had reappeared. He came to the dungeons that belonged to them and cleared the entire area on his own. They have lost over 100 guild members in recent days, and it looks like this is just the beginning. Jong ordered that from that moment on, the dungeons be strengthened and that everything be done to catch Kong. 5 days have passed since the attack. First, his body disappeared somewhere, and then the attacks on the dungeons began. Now Jong has no doubt that his enemy has strong allies who are helping him. He was able to hide his body with the help of skill, which already characterizes him as a very strong opponent to be wary of. John decided to call someone and ask for help. He was willing to pay generously for it. If you look closely, you can guess that at that moment he called Yuson, and the guy agreed to take part in this case. A few hours later, the sun set over the horizon, which means the predator is out hunting again. There were several guards near one of the dungeons belonging to the Bait Guild. One of these guards was Yuson. He had been waiting for a long time to meet this unusual warrior that everyone was talking about. He enjoys fighting strong opponents, and it seems like he'll have that opportunity again soon. As soon as he saw his enemy, he immediately felt his heartbeat speed up and a sense of joy. His sixth sense is highly responsive. This extraordinary skill has long helped Yuson in critical situations. If he doesn't want to die at this dungeon gate, he needs to run away from this masked monster immediately. As he got closer, Khan recognized his friend from the academy and tried to understand what he was doing here. When Yuson heard his name, he immediately recognized the voice of the man in the mask, and finally we were able to meet old acquaintances. Now Ai-sun realized that it was Kang who had been killing people from her bait all this time, so this is how he spends his free time. He also began to analyze this whole situation. He remembered that Yu-sung was a pretty rich guy. It seemed like his family was related to the guild. Yu-seon laughed and said that he had nothing to do with this garbage. He just agreed to help because it might be fun. Kang said that he had no complaints against Yu-sung and asked the guy not to interfere in this conflict. He thought they were friends and shouldn't fight each other. But Yu-sung had a completely different opinion. He waited for the perfect moment to attack and delivered a powerful blow. Only with the help of incredible intuition was Khan able to defend himself. It seems that this guy turned out to be a real psychopath who is not going to turn a blind eye to everything that is happening. He said that he was bored with life without fun. He wanted to have some fun and fight a strong opponent. We had to immediately activate the giant's strength and Wayne's secret technique, the only way to defeat this psychopath. They have both made significant progress since their last meeting. Now these guys are even stronger than before. Khan is not at all interested in this battle. On the contrary, he wants to end this battle as quickly as possible and continue destroying the Bait Guild. But on the other hand, he hadn't felt this much courage from a battle with an opponent in a long time. At this moment, another dungeon guard intervened in the battle. He thought that if he could stop Khan, he would be generously rewarded. It seems Yuson doesn't want to share his future loot, so he immediately chopped off this guy's head. Now it immediately becomes clear that they are not allies at all, and Yusung really came here for another reason. After that, his mood immediately disappeared. He just wanted to fight, but he didn't want Kang to hate him. He told his friend from the academy that Jong was the son of a serious man from a big company, which was why he was so influential. Kang replied that such information would not make him calm down and forget about revenge. He would still kill Jong. Yuson asked him to listen to the story to the end, and also said that he wanted to join in and also take part in this matter. The next morning, Jong found out about everything that had happened and almost went mad with anger. He was informed that 3 more dungeons had been completely cleared, and Yuson was not getting in touch. He ordered his assistant to immediately gather all the guild members and bring them here. I had to inform the angry boss that lately a lot of people have been leaving the guild. Some aren't even answering phone calls. John said that he gives permission for threats to families, murders, and cruel treatment, as long as his wish is fulfilled. At that moment, he received a call from a hidden number, perhaps from one of his allies who wanted to help. Meanwhile, Kang and Yu-sung continued to work together, making a really good duo. Every evening, she cleared several dungeons belonging to the Bait Guild, and it was time to put an end to all this. Soon, Jong received a message saying that if he wanted to save his guild, he must come to the dungeons of the Druid Forest. He gathered all his warriors and prepared for a fierce confrontation against his old enemy. He already dreams of ripping off Khan's head and hanging it in his office. We remember that the day before he spoke to an unknown caller on the phone. This person greeted me and said that he wanted to lend a helping hand if needed. They were able to become friends through Yuson's mediation, and this unknown person was the first to get in touch. It seemed like everything was going according to plan, but at the last moment this man refused to help. John couldn't believe that his last hope was crumbling before his eyes. Now he would have to rely on his father. Only he could help him. Meanwhile, in another part of the city, conversations continued about the Bait Guild. This influential man who had spoken to Zhang was called Minjun, and he was now talking to his assistant. He learned that the Bait Guild had summoned all its members, and even John had gone to meet the devil. Minjun is not going to help this scum anymore, and risk his own warriors for it. The assistant decided to remind him that if Zhang died, his father, Master Sansu, would be incredibly angry about it. But Minjun didn't like these words. He immediately showed his warrior that he was not going to be afraid of any old wimps. He ordered to do all the dirty work and ignore the various rumors. Now they need to find new objects for financing. Now let's move on to the D-rank dungeon called the Druid Forest. John has been waiting to meet Kang for a long time. They agreed to meet much earlier, but the guy still hasn't come. All members of the Bay's Guild were prepared for an unexpected ambush, but soon they saw something incomprehensible in front of them. Looking closer, you could see a boat running away from a huge pack of wolves. He was carrying a little wolf with him, who had been born only a few days earlier. Now he wants to hand this wolf over to his enemies so that they can become the target. Of course, the warriors, even despite their cruelty, could not let this little creature die. This wolf was so beautiful that he immediately took all their hearts, like Cupid. Kan's plan is quite simple. He took the little wolves, and now their parents are incredibly angry and ready to kill anyone who gets in their way. That is, Kan won't even have to fight all these guild warriors. The wolves will do it for him. All he had to do was run away and leave a bunch of fools to fight the monsters. These wolves are difficult to fight because of their invisibility. But now they are angry, and this adds even more problems. Soon, Zhang had to admit that they were too weak to defeat these monsters, and had to retreat immediately. While the portal is not yet closed, they will have time to return home safely. It seemed that the Bait Guild found a way out of the critical situation very quickly, but Kan was able to predict even such a plot twist. For this, he needed his friend Yusong, who waited his turn to have some fun at this party. Only now did Zhang realize that Yusong had completely betrayed him and the Bait Guild. This is called a total fiasco. All his people die at the hands of these cruel and uncompromising warriors. All that remains is to wait for the Black Death to come and take his soul. John realized that the situation was completely out of control, so he would have to use his techniques to survive and win. If he is doomed to death, he must take everyone involved in this disaster with him to hell. This technique is called Fire Skin, in simple terms, something that can burn itself. This skill is dangerous to his life due to its colossal power, but he wants Kan to die with him. He probably underestimates the strength of his enemy, and especially the lighthouse skill makes his skin much stronger. Recall that this skill is called the Anti-Ator's Cover, and it can save the body from fire. So Kang withstood this incredible firebomb and struck back. They can't peacefully disperse, so Zhang has to sit back and watch as all his people slowly die. In response, this boy started laughing like a madman. A similar disease that Yusong and Kang suffer from has now infected the guild leader, Bait. Soon all his men were dead, and it was time to talk to the enemies. John turned out to be an illegitimate child. He was completely unexpected. He was born from the mistress of a wealthy man. Strangers were closer to him than his own brothers and sisters. They always looked down on him, as if he were an empty space. Oddly enough, in parallel with this, he was constantly involved in the struggle for power, although it was obvious that he would get nothing. The father probably felt sorry for the boy, so he supported him. That's how it was until the world changed. Training has appeared as well as awakened people, along with a huge number of dangerous dungeons. The principle of survival of the fittest once again prevailed in the world, and it was then that he realized that this was his chance to change the situation. The guys decided to stop this story and cut off Chan's head. No one needs all this nonsense. Kang had long dreamed of silencing this brazen boy, and he finally succeeded. He thanked Yusong for his help, and said that without him he would not have been able to defeat such a large army of warriors. Usually, when revenge is over, a person feels empty inside, which is exactly what is happening to Kan now. He approached and took the dungeon core, although his thoughts were directed in a completely different direction. Only now does he realize that he cannot protect his family with the help of finances and force alone. He needs to gain power. Soon, the dungeons of the Druid Forest were completely cleared and finally closed. Kang started thinking about creating his own guild. He hadn't even fully explained his plan yet, and Yusong had already agreed to become a member of his team. He is sure that such a guild will be incredibly fun. His sixth sense rarely fails. Back then, no one could have guessed that a small guild, created by two men as a joke, would become the most famous guild in Korea. They returned home and got a well-deserved rest, but soon someone very influential found out about this whole situation. Now we are talking about the president of Hansock Company, Sansu, who was John's father. He yelled at Minjun and reminded him that he was responsible for his son, but he didn't keep his word. Minjun smiled and said that nothing should be expected from a fool with no abilities who was made the boss of a large guild. He is sure that he has worked off all his money, but Sansa disagrees and orders all her men to immediately attack this traitor. It was quite strange, because Minjun wasn't worried at all and wasn't even in a hurry to prepare for the fight. His skills are so strong that in order to defeat a pack of armed men, he doesn't even need to get up from his chair. They had a contract, and Minjun fully fulfilled all his obligations. There should be no complaints against him, and if there are any, he is ready to immediately resolve all problems on the spot. If this situation happens again, he promises to behead Sansa, even despite his high position in the country. According to the contract, he must receive the money, so he will wait for payment until the end of the day. As he was leaving, he thought about it, wondering who exactly could have killed Jon. It must have been a very talented warrior. The destruction of the large and powerful Bait Guild has led to a huge amount of rumors and talk. Of course, journalists and adventurers created a real stir, but as a result, the emergence of new guilds and talented awakened ones took all the attention. The boys shouldn't have any more problems because the guild no longer exists. All these battles have made them even stronger, and now they can enjoy a little bit of a peaceful life. Khan is unhappy with the title he has received. This title is called the Cruel Destroyer. The essence of this title is that for the huge number of broken families in a harsh way, Khan received this title. Now he will receive an increase in his performance as well as the ability to instill fear in the surrounding opponents. But he does not like this at all. Lately he has been considered a psychopath and a maniac. Now he really looks a lot like Yu Sung. Soon Inspector Kim from the Dangun Guild called him. They hadn't seen each other for a long time. Kim hopes that Kang still remembers their deal, but of course Kang has forgotten all about it. Actually, they had arranged to meet with the leader of the Dangun Guild, so now Kang had to fulfill his part of the agreement. Soon the guy took Yuson with him and went to the city center to the guild office. Of course, he first asked permission to bring such a psychopath with him, but Kim said that Yu Shung could also be useful to the guild. It turned out that Yu Shung had known Han for a long time. They had already met at a cultural evening. Soon the time came for Khan to personally meet this woman of legend. Hana is not only a talented leader of the Dangun Guild, she is also a very beautiful girl. She had already heard a lot about this guy and had long dreamed of meeting him in person. The girl decided to get down to business right away and invited Khan to join her guild and become a member of her team. It's no surprise to hear that this brazen guy, who considers himself a real Terminator, immediately turned down the offer. He doesn't mind paying for help, but he wants a completely different method to be chosen. If Hana needs help in any situation, she can immediately call on Kang. The girl believes that for them, it was also a successful deal. Now their competitor, the Bait Guild, has been completely destroyed, and they can breathe easier. On the other hand, the girl immediately said that this silence would not last long. A world in which dungeons have appeared, as well as increased crime, has every chance of exploding at any moment. Kang immediately remembered the 8th round of training and realized that the current world was truly in a state of calm before the storm. He believes that worrying about this will not help. The only way to prepare for the future is to become stronger. They should have 5 more years before connecting to the Hacken dimension, but Hana reminded them that there were only 3 years left. In just 3 years, they will be under serious threat of destruction, so there is very little time left. She can't tell all the secrets, but she has a friend who can tell the future. She is probably talking about the Dimension Administrator, whom Khan had already met in the 8th stage of training. The difficulty level of the dungeons is constantly increasing, while the level of the Awakened remains at the same level. Firearms don't kill monsters, so bows and crossbows are all that remain in fashion. Only those people who constantly train actively in new conditions can become as strong as Khan. He can count on becoming a hero, but it won't be easy, because he will have to sacrifice something for this. Hana knows what this guy did to the Bait Guild. She thinks it's the right decision because they don't need trash. A warrior like Khan is worth much more than 100 ordinary warriors of the Bait Guild. The world is not protected by holy people, but by the strongest. Soon their conversation ended. Instructor Kim escorted the boys to the car and returned to the guild boss. It turns out that this is not what Hana expected from their meeting at all, and now she looks a little confused and upset. Although she immediately noticed that when the conversation about the Dimension Administrator started, Kang immediately started to worry. There's no doubt that this guy has been fully trained, and that explains a lot. Let's move on to another dungeon that was opened in the city center a few days ago. The difference between an E and D rank dungeon is only 1 letter, but in reality the difference is incredibly large. The strength and number of monsters immediately increases, and an obvious change is the variety of monsters that can be found in this place. Soon, when Khan had almost completely cleared the perimeter, he encountered a huge creature called an ogre chimera. Seeing this giant, Khan immediately decided to invite him to become a member of the new guild. They have already managed to agree with Yusan that whoever brings in a newcomer will receive a bonus, but it seems like a chimera is against such offers. You will have to change the topic of conversation and speak in a language that this monster understands. Creatures like him only understand the language of force, so you'll have to chop off Yumkoma one's head and send him to hell. With the help of the magic explosion skill, you can try to cause him serious problems. It turns out that this monster's skin is much stronger than expected, so we'll have to come up with something more interesting. With the help of reason, you can always come up with a brilliant plan, for example, taking the monster's hammer and destroying it with this weapon. This dungeon is not just about Khan. Many different warriors have come here to clean up this place and make big money. They saw an armed girl in front of them and decided that she would be easy prey for them. We've met her before. Maybe she'll play an important role in our story in the future. Meanwhile, the other warriors heard too many strange sounds in the dungeon that didn't sound like the screams of monsters. Maybe it's related to the crazy guy who took the hammer of the main boss of this dungeon. When these warriors saw it, they couldn't believe their eyes. To lift such a large weapon, one must have an incredible amount of strength. Khan hasn't tasted human blood in a long time. He loves killing bad guys, and now he wants to have a little fun.